about various training programs that we could implement so that our teaching staff are able to facilitate teaching on these platforms that we're introducing to our students. They need to familiarize themselves with the technology and the various innovative ideas that we are trying to implement in our institutions. But also something that I gathered, especially from the student discussion, change needs to be gradual. As one of our students mentioned, changing abruptly and suddenly creates chaos and confusion, and they feel lost and scared. And as we've learned, the anxiety based on the pandemic and various other things can cause stress and impact on their learning. So we really need to also consider, yes, we need to change. Unfortunately, we can't stay stagnant. But how we change is what we need to consider. And there's a scripture which says, we know nothing because we were born yesterday. And the truth is, we are limited as to how much we are able to know. We don't have all the answers, and that's the point of this forum. Sharing information, ideas, and the outcome of this forum may not be conclusive. We may have to come back after measuring the impact of teaching innovations in our various institutions and further discuss, okay, so I learned and I did this and it kind of didn't work. And I did this and I think it works better. So to start off our day, we're going to have a Regent presenter, Hussein Issouf, who is the Red Hub and Operations Manager at Regent Business School. So I hope you are ready. But as he's preparing himself to come up, he'll be discussing the topic, do innovative approaches produce better graduates? As he makes his way, I'll just share a little bit of his background. Mr. Issouf has 24 years of practical experience in the NGO sector, more specifically the Zaka sector. He worked with the South African National Zaka Fund for most of his career as general manager in 2 of the 5 regions, and also held the position of national coordinator for 2 years. Hussein completed a 1-year social entrepreneurship certificate program at the Gordon Institute of Business School in 2012 and was a recipient of the P.P. Vilakazi Award for leadership. He continued his association with SECP and assisted students with their action learning program by providing feedback guidance in their EL submissions. Hussein joined Regent in October 2019 as Operation Manager at the Johannesburg Learning Center and was asked to lead the Red Hub, which you've heard about thus far at Regent, which is the Regent Enterprise Development Hub. Among his many responsibilities, he's also the program facilitator of the Higher Certificate in Entrepreneurship at Regent, where he introduced the practical component, work-directed learning, which is a special program where students gain soft skills, digital skills, and entrepreneurship, just to name a few. And I'm sure some of you, especially from the evening dinner, you got to hear a little bit about that, the demonstration from our iLead lab, and all of that is incorporated into this particular program. With his passion for entrepreneurship and upskilling others, he often comes up with new innovations and initiatives in support of student development. His motto is, always striving, always serving. Please, Hussein, you have our attention.
Good morning, everyone. I thought I'll just bring in a can, and we can decide what the content of the can is a bit later, whether it's peas or corn. Yeah, we can decide on that. I'm promising you sweet corn, because I love sweet corn, although I love peas as well, but you'll tell me whether we're talking of sweet corn or peas a bit later. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, firstly, to SAAIR, right, for the opportunity to present. It's been a long time since I've attempted to write some sort of a real paper. So I took it on with a bit of apprehension, but a lot of excitement, and I think I'm going to give you sweet corn. Let's see. Can we get the projection on? So in front of you, I gave you a page with some pages to scan. You can turn it over, but don't scan as yet. When I'm ready and when I instruct you, then you will scan at that stage. But ideally, we'd need everyone to scan. For those that are watching us online, the QR code will appear on the screen at the appropriate time. And at that point, you will be encouraged to participate in the mini survey, on-the-spot survey. So imagine, if you will, 3 first-year university students, all of them enrolled in the same 3-year program at the same university, attending the same classes, delivered by the same lecturer with access to the same online campus resources. At the end of the program, only 2 students graduate and secure a job, while the one drops out or fails. And then further on, 3 years down the road, of the 2 that graduated, only one manages to secure a promotion, and the other either leaves, gets fired, or no promotion within the company. Now, on the surface of it, it would appear at the point of graduation at 66%, the university is successful. Students would consider them to be successful. At the point of employment, 100% employment, university would consider themselves to be an excellent facilitator of that, and students would feel good about that as well. However, the employer, who may be agnostic in terms of their preference for a university, may have a different opinion on the quality of the graduates. And some of the challenges of that we will discuss. So if you look at this stats again, 1 of 3 may not sound bad. 1 of 3 fail may not sound bad. But extend that to 10 of 30, 100 of 300, 1,000 out of 3,000. And that should worry us in terms of the graduate throughput rate, etc., etc. So this is your first chance to work with me on a survey. So there's a QR code in front of you. You can either type in the URL or scan the QR code that's in front of you. Okay, so online is on the chat for QR code 1. I'll just give you 30 seconds to enter this. And basically all I need to know is, which of these 2 do you prefer? All right, let's move on. There are a number of stakeholders who have an interest in the success of higher education and education more generally, including governments, regulatory bodies, parents, family of students, university employers, and of course, students. This presentation will focus on the latter 3, that is university, employers, and students, in response to the topic, do innovative approaches produce better graduates? We will do this by first defining what we understand by innovation and better graduates. Next, we will identify how to measure the impact of innovation and how to measure the impact of innovation, and whether or not this produces better graduates. And finally, we will list a few examples of innovative approaches in education that produce better graduates. So by definition, innovation is a practical implementation of ideas and results in the introduction of new goods or services or improvement in the goods or services. This is a sort of standard definition of innovation. In the case of innovation in education, the implication would then be innovations in education are therefore intended to raise productivity and efficiency of learning and or improving learning quality. These are not my definitions, these are sort of stock standard definitions. We can debate about those at another time. But let's just go with these definitions for purposes of progress. In education, innovation can appear as a new pedagogic theory, methodological approach, teaching technique, instructional tool, learning process, or institutional structure that, when implemented, produces a significant change in the teaching approach, which leads to better student learning and better quality graduates. Innovation can be in theory and practice, and will therefore cover curriculum, teaching and learning, assessments, policy, technology, institutions and administration, institutional culture, and teacher education. I think a lot of these were raised yesterday in our discussion as sort of side points or key takeaways. It can be applied to any aspect of education that can make a positive impact on learning and teaching, and of course on learners. However, innovation may not necessarily always be beneficial and can sometimes be counterproductive to other aspects of performance in the workplace. So if it's new or it's innovative, doesn't automatically mean you're going to get an improvement, because there are consequences and knock-on effects on other things within the ecosystem that could affect the delivery of teaching and learning. So what is meant by better graduates? So if I can get you back onto the second QR code 2. It's a quick vote I need from you. And what we need you to do is just to select what is your definition of better graduates. What's an indicator of better graduates? Lance, are you with me? Are you doing that as well? Yeah. Let's do that quickly. It's a cop-out to tick all three, but you can. Okay, are we okay with that? So, one of our challenges when preparing this paper was to define what is meant by and how to assess better graduates. We were sure that it does not include pass rate or pass mark, which, as you would agree, I hope, is not an authentic measure of the quality of learning. Instead, we equated better graduates in terms of their work readiness, again a term that was used yesterday, and more generally, graduates' attributes, usually described as soft skills and sometimes expressed as 21st century skills that contributes towards work readiness. Notwithstanding our narrow definition, we accept that high pass marks and high pass rates are indicative of innovations at university, but they are not necessarily an indication of quality of graduates. So, again, something that I found useful, defined by Grant. He defines graduateness as it's a mouthful, guys, so walk with me, a job literate students, technically numerate, professionally skilled, communicatively competent, and ethically sound graduate ready for the world of work. Not only is it a mouthful, I don't know how many of those I would tick off at my very young age at 52. One of the most discussed and controversial debates within the current literature on higher education relates to the quality of graduates and the lack of soft skills. Employer groups complain about the lack of graduates' transferable skills and expect graduates upon commencing employment to be employment ready. They highlight graduates' inability to transfer their acquired skills to real-life situations. And I think we had a small taste of that yesterday when the students in the afternoon were speaking about their agility to adapt to a new assessment regime. And I think to some extent, the responses is a positive indication that they are certainly on the path towards having attained those type of skills. But we will explore more. However, what you see on your screen there, and I've highlighted about 4 or 5 of them, you will notice that those 4 or 5 in a survey of employers, this is in the European Union, indicate that these are the type of skills, students, that employers are looking for. So yes, they're looking for a barrister, they call them barristers in the UK. They're looking for a barrister that has exceptionally good understanding of the field and the expertise, but they also want the person who has these type of skills. So you can have all the paper qualifications, straight A's, but if you can't communicate, if you don't have empathy, then you've missed the mark in terms of work readiness in terms of this measure. 54% of employers in the UK perceive graduates to be highly qualified but lacking soft skills, resulting in many vacancies being unfilled. While graduate employability has been receiving increased attention over the last while, this complex concept is difficult to articulate, as there is no clear understanding and agreement on what actually constitutes graduate employability skills. There are different ways of defining and classifying soft skills, and I think some of these were dropped yesterday in different presentations: life skills, 21st century skills, transversal skills, generic competencies, and lifelong learning. These are all the type of skills that a typical graduate should have that would aid them in their mastering, firstly, their field of work, but also being able to grow within their field. These and other meta competencies are commonly used to refer to the emotional side of human beings. Although there seems to be a general consensus and an understanding of both academia and industry regarding the importance of transferable skills, it seems that employers, higher education providers, and young people do not understand each other. So this is the last of my game for this morning, QR code 3. Let's try and get you to do a quick vote. There's a QR sheet in front of you. If not, I'll just get you one. No, not that one. The black and white one, yeah. So if you turn it around, QR code 3. Yeah, colleagues online, it's in the chat. So just scan QR code 3. That's where we're on now. And when you get a chance a bit later, you can do 1 and 2 as well. So what I'm trying to figure out here is, where are we in terms of our understanding of a priority of ranking for these type of sort of soft skills, if you wish? Research to compare students' and employers' perceptions regarding the importance of soft skills in different European countries show that 86% of respondents indicate an increased emphasis on soft skills over the past 5 or 10 years, and that companies consider soft skills more important than students and graduates. Furthermore, major differences have also been identified in the ranking of soft skills, indicating different levels of priorities. As a response to this increased pressure from policymakers and employers, higher education institutions have started to pay increased attention to graduate employability through developing and integrating a number of soft skills or soft skills-based learning outcomes into their degree programs. University teaching staff are increasingly required to develop and adopt pedagogical tools to help graduates acquire transferable skills through their time at university. Furthermore, various studies highlight the need for employers to engage, collaborate, and partner with universities in order to address this matter, suggesting that employers actively participate in the development of graduate transferable skills through offering skill sessions on campuses or taking an increased number of graduates in placements and internships and developing and delivering business case studies. To be fair though, higher education institutions seem to have responded to this criticism and progressively addressed this issue. However, the improvements in students' acquisition of transferable competencies still seem to be missing. So let me throw a cat among the pigeon. When earlier I tried to define graduateness, and so Hinchcliffe poses a very interesting question. And are these attributes that we are expecting of young 21-year-olds a realistic thing to achieve within the period and paradigm that we live in? And so keeping that in the back of our mind, we need to be realistic about how we want to achieve what we need to achieve without wholesale changing of the program and the curriculum in such a manner that we overwhelm the students with this kind of skills. Everyone with me so far? I'm not going to ask for pigeons and flowers, but not pigeons, penguins and flowers, yeah. But if you want to do penguins and flowers online, you can do that as well. Okay, so let's move on. If you accept that 21st century skills are an indicator of graduate attributes that demonstrate better quality graduates, then it is imperative that we define and reach consensus on what attributes we want to teach and how we want to measure them. The role of higher education is not only to educate undergraduates to perform work tasks, but to get them to generate innovations as well. Studies have shown that skills needed in participation of innovation activities are not yet part of actual teaching at the university. Yet, for individuals to take part in innovative activities at workplaces require that they develop a set of specific skills and competencies during their studies, as these skills are best developed and when they are embedded into the curricula as an object of learning and an object of the learning process. Oh, I got some. Thank you for that. Quick admission, I couldn't find too much information on South African, so I'm quoting some of the sort of first world nations, whether it's Europe or Australia. So Australian universities have for many years attempted to embed graduate attributes into the curriculum. However, limited attempts have been made to find out if graduates are actually attaining those attributes using employer feedback. So this is where you come in, Dr. Chang, the assessments. There are several studies and attempts at developing a list of graduate attributes, some designed by scholars, others designed in collaboration with employers and students. Some list 50+ attributes or soft skills, while others summarize them to as little as half a dozen or so. We would like to present the outcome of a study published under the title, How to Measure Student Innovation and Competencies in Higher Education, done by a group of scholars from Finland. I've written here as Finnish scholars, but I know most of you are Finnish, but scholars from Finland. And it's an interesting study. So after extensive testing, consulting, and remodeling over several iterations, the following 5-dimensional instrument consisting of 22 items was produced by the scholars around about 2018. In Q&A, if you want to ask me how they got to this, I've got a short summary to explain how they got to the stage. But what's interesting is they developed a tool, largely a self-assessment tool, that students use primarily to rate their own understanding and level of competency in these 22 fields. If they are small, forgive me. We will share the slides, etc. Correct, Sarah? And so you can have a bit more in-depth look at it. But for those of you in the academic delivery of the program, I think you will find some of these interesting. So this particular instrument, some of the key takeaways of the researchers is that this instrument brings a new perspective and support for the pedagogical practices and assessment culture in higher education. The assessment tool can present a method in scientific research and be applied to hands-on work. It can be used to measure the development of students' perceptions of innovations and innovative competencies throughout the degree program and measure the effectiveness of universities and their pedagogical practices to produce innovative expertise. It also contributes to the development of curriculum design, teaching, and assessment in higher education. The key to teaching creativity and innovation of skills lies in creating quality learning environments that give learners the opportunity to solve authentic, real-world problems and be inquisitive and open-minded. Again, I think some of these points were raised in yesterday's discussion. For that purpose, a teacher could use this list of innovation or innovation competencies as a rubric or a checklist for planning learning environments, courses, or learning tasks. It could help teachers to reflect on these competencies that are emerging during their pedagogical practices. The instrument also could be used as a development tool to increase awareness of important aspects of innovation behavior. Finally, it helps students to understand the importance of the application of innovative competencies in the innovation process and in working life. Understanding their own level of innovation competencies prepares students better for a more complex life and a work environment. The assessment tool requires students, this is key, to monitor or to self-monitor and to regulate their own learning as they reflect on their achievements and demonstrate that they have exceeded, that they have met or exceeded the standard of their program and the institution. These self-evaluations can be considered as an efficient tool for learning, helping students increasingly self-steer their learning. You don't know what you don't know. Hopefully this type of a tool surfaces for you or helps you create awareness in you, for you in terms of the kind of things that you need to know and get better knowledge of. This last part of this program, I'll go through some case studies or some examples of how innovations are beginning to show positive results to student performance and hopefully demonstrate that these innovative approaches indeed produce better graduates. In 2007, a national Australian study made a clear link between graduate attributes and employability. And at the same time, the term work-integrated learning brought greater attention to authentic assessment for enhanced graduate employability. At about the same time, Australia's Curtin University commenced a 3-year initiative called Curriculum 2010, aimed at ensuring degree programs were excellent and sustainable. The underlying premise that was that achievement of graduate attributes would lead to enhanced employability, as the achievement of skills, understandings, and personal attributes makes better graduates and makes the graduates more likely to secure employment and be successful in their chosen occupation. For Curtin, the 22 initiative, it was assumed, would likely lead to better student outcomes. One of the major outcomes of the program, so what Curtin did, they developed a self-assessment tool. I think it was an online portal where students were regularly required to go in and check themselves against a few criteria. And it helped to create self-awareness in students about their level of skills or competencies or the lack thereof. I'm losing one slide. A major outcome of the 2010 initiative was the creation and implementation of the iPortfolio system, which enabled users to create, collect, and collaborate on evidence of their learning and professional development. It was, in essence, a self-assessment tool to assist learners to confidently draw on the evidence of their learning achievement. At the time, this was a huge innovation, given that the portfolio approach has been shown to be effective in assisting students to reflect on learning achievements at various levels and over time. The Australian University Quality Agency commended Curtin and the Curriculum 2010 program for having a major impact across Curtin and its contribution to the impetus of significant cultural change, improving staff engagement, and practice in teaching and learning. I'm going to go with example 2 now. So the first example is that of a self-assessment tool called iPortfolio. The next example, according to the US-based Strada Education Network Institute for the Future of Work, 85% of freshman students say their main priority for attending college is to get a good job. Unfortunately, only 27% of college students report securing a good job before graduation, and 4 out of 10 graduates are underemployed in their first jobs. In the USA, a cluster of higher education institutions under the banner of UIA, University Innovation Alliance, was formed by 7 universities in 2014. These universities serve primarily first-generation, low-income students and undocumented communities. So they are not too different, I think, from many of our South African universities. UIA had innovated and co-created a solution that culminated in a new model for equitable career readiness. And I was going to attempt my American accent for the next quote, but I'm just going to say it in my plain South African English. I'm going to try, if I try right. So, according to the UIA, they tout it as the gold standard. Did I get it closer? The gold standard for any university to produce graduate-ready students and to partner effectively with employers and substantially increase the ROI of the degree from the institution. UIA suggests that making access to career opportunities more equitable requires a significant redesign of current campus systems, as well as new solutions to address the challenges facing students. Rather than putting the burden of career readiness on students, this is something that we raised yesterday, rather than putting the burden of career readiness on students, universities need to make themselves ready to support students into and through the university to career transition. I think the gentleman on the right there asked the students yesterday, where did you access it? Did you go and access it? So our own career officer on campus will tell you, and typically, and having been to campus myself, you usually find them on the 17th floor in one corner somewhere, right on the other side of the cafeteria. And you know that no student goes there, right? This requires commitment from the university, robust partnerships with employers, and the input from students about what is the most useful to them from a career preparation perspective. And this is it. Career officers are often seen by real teachers as pathologists to whom weak students can be referred, or as an outsourced service that is provided and they don't need to be engaged with. So just, here's a letter, go and see the career officer. I think you're suffering from mental health or some issues. And we wipe our hands off them, and whether the student lands up at the career office, we don't know. So some of the outcomes from the program were very interesting. I'm not going to go through all the lines, but just to say that there was a visible and tangible impact on the program as attributed by the teaching staff, the career office, the management of the universities, as well as the students. They felt a lot easier phasing into university, settling in, finding their right path, and moving on in their career slides. Forgive me, these are too small, but these are just some examples of the kind of inputs that different groups of people gave. So 4 constituencies here, 4 stakeholders, career advisors, students, university heads, and employers, largely positive about this career readiness programs that was introduced by UIA. The third example, and maybe the third last example. One method of developing these skills among students is to expose them to real work environments. Through strategic partnerships with industry, universities have instituted programs to expose students to the workplace, thereby reducing the initial shock of a reality quite different from their work of academia, in the world of academia. These experiences may be described as practicum or gap year or internships, cooperative education experiences, work-integrated learning. At Regent, we use work-directed learning. And the commonality between them is that students are immersed in the work environment, arranged or endorsed by the university so that they can experience the routine of employment. Interestingly, the top 5 areas which the interns reported that they have developed work-related skills include time management, communication skills, problem-solving skills, and teamwork. If you remember my earlier slide, these were identified as the soft skills. So immersing students, even while they are studying in the world of work, exposes them to the type of skills that they eventually will need. This last example, okay, let me just give you the stats quickly. Something to reflect on. So according to employers, the frequency in recruiting graduates is 43%, and the best way to cooperate on recruitment. So the employers felt that there was a lack of will or the lack of outreach from universities to try and influence their curriculum and their program, and they actually calling for it. Of course, this is in the European Union. Let's move on to the last example. The last example is autonomy. At first glance, fostering a sense of autonomy may seem counterintuitive, given that teamwork and networking, that is group work and collaboration, are considered as desirable graduate attributes that produce better graduates. However, graduate outcomes and competencies are a result of a whole university experience, and innovation is one of those expected outcomes. A longitudinal study to explore the main determinants of students' innovation behavior was carried out among 78 students in psychology, management, fine arts, and education. And although the fine arts students performed the best, it indicated that previous innovation behaviors as freshmen, current levels of autonomy and cognitive demands are positively related with individual innovation among university students. Individual innovation also could be regarded as a behavior that implies new ways of doing things, fostered by having autonomy in carrying out one's own tasks and assignments. Previous research considering individual innovation from a behavioral practice has found that innovation can be fostered by some job design characteristics such as autonomy, and may be used by workers either as a mode of adjustment to work transition or as an active coping strategy to manage a high volume of job demands. And again, if I refer back to the students yesterday, when Sarah asked the question, how did we throw you under the bus? And just by the answers, we could sort of appreciate their quick ability to be able to cope with the new change overnight, literally. And that's a positive indicator that they've at least internalized and adopted some of the skills required as part of the competencies. The results on the study of autonomy has been shown to positively contribute to a wide range of undergraduates' outcomes, such as intrinsic motivation, more effective learning, better academic performance, more effective coping with setbacks and failures, research and self-efficacy in psychology and well-being. And in doing so, ways to cope with job demands and therefore reduce stress. You can't teach people to reduce stress. You practice that through a process. In short, research on individual innovation in the workplace has clearly established that job autonomy fosters innovation behaviors. It is therefore suggested that educators consider designing tasks and assignments that require higher autonomy from students as part of the curricula. They also recommend that beyond first year, educators, in addition to providing autonomy, could also consider implementing tasks involving higher cognitive demands to further enhance students' innovation. And in conclusion, so as a tool, technology is simply just that. It will be remiss of me not to mention the effects and oftentimes the positive effects of technology innovation in education. And I think it's a paper on its own. I'm not sure if somebody's presenting one, Sarah. The rich history of education technology innovations is filled with optimism. And Dr. Sheikh, in his presentation yesterday, showed us some lovely slides of bygone era technology. So some of you will remember, and Dr. Blom kept on referring to radio and TV, and nothing wrong with that. But when those things first came in as tools, overhead projectors, I don't know how many, have you ever seen, youngsters, people ever seen an overhead projector? Oh, you did? In a museum or in a classroom? Hey, my class, okay. Yeah. So teachers would remember, or educators would remember, when these technologies first came out, how excited people were about the possibilities that were linked to it. Whether or not they were fully realized and appreciated, I'm not entirely sure. But some educators used the transparency paper and very fancy color marking pens to make it as engaging as possible, and others used it just to write their full essay as notes, like I've done now with PowerPoint, and just stick it up on the wall, and students read it if you want to, if you don't, no problem. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you. I hope that I gave you a can of sweet corn. Incidentally, there's a can of baked beans. I couldn't get sweet corn this morning. Right. But I was hoping to give you sweet corn, and I hope that you enjoyed the sweet corn. Thank you very much.
Please. So don't disappear. We're having the Q&A now. But there are a few comments from online that I want to share. Don't leave the platform.
Yeah.
They're still going to ask
I'm
you.
I'm here.
Okay. So I think this is Dr. Karin, because on my phone, all the text is sort of abbreviated. She said, I like the term job literate. And then Teruvani says, a really good definition. I like communicative competent. Of course, we sent you a few penguins, and then Dr. Karin says that she demanded the American, so we're very glad that you did that. And she also said, wow, that was interesting. I'm not sure which part, so Dr. Karen, you must elaborate further on that one. And she said she's very happy with the excellent sweet corn Thanks.
Thank you.
Then we have another comment. Very thought-provoking presentation. Thank you. Oh, the comment she made was on the autonomy.
Okay.
So our colleagues online, I encourage you to please raise your hand. I can see you on my phone, so raise your hand and I can also call on you should you wish to comment or ask Hussein a question. But now we're going into our Q&A, so if you have questions, please raise your hand and he will pick you and I will come to you.
Hand up was first up, so I'll go with her.
Mine is not actually a question, just the ranking that you sent to us. The ranking numbers do not align with the options, so we're unable to actually submit it.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's 4, it needed to be 6 to align with the options.
Okay.
But we can just, I guess, yeah? Oh, okay, thank
You're doing
you.
it on your phone. So just
My phone,
Yeah,
okay, thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that, yeah. And of course, you can only rank one once. Yeah, but there's 6 options there, yeah. Dr. Blom, go light on me.
Good morning. No, I will not be mean. This was very interesting, really, I must say. And I want to just comment on the issue around will, because for us, as you know, it is still quite an emerging concept, wanting to apply it in our particular context. And the first thing I want to say about will is that, of course, it's not uncontested. People don't understand it in the same way, and that your true blue academics wouldn't agree with it, that it's real knowledge that is being generated in that particular way. So that's the first thing. So when we think about will, then and the value of will, then we also need to remember that it's not uncontested.
Sure.
The second thing that I want to mention is that, and there are lots of public university representatives here, and they can also say what they feel about it. But that's also been my experience, that students don't enter a program with the idea of getting a nice, broad, foundational education. You know, reading your letters and reading your reading for science and whatever, literature and that type of, and languages, like in the traditional university in the previous centuries. They, if you ask them, and maybe we should ask our students, why did you choose this program? And they will say, I wanted to become a chiropractor. I wanted to become a lawyer, or I wanted to, you know, so I think there's a mismatch between what we intend to do with a foundational degree and the expectation of the student. Let me leave that one there, but I think the final thing around work-integrated learning is, of course, we have to think about it differently, because if we say that work-integrated learning is about placing students in workplaces, we're in trouble, because we don't have enough workplaces.
Correct.
Okay, yes. First of all. And quite frankly, the workplaces don't want to take the responsibility for students. So we have to think about will or work-directed learning or workplace-based learning or problem-based learning or whatever in different ways than the traditional way of placing a student in a workplace.
It's not internships, basically, yeah. So
or
the
even
opportunity that she
internships.
had,
Yes.
the opportunity that she had, because it was a very practical program, required her to go and get those additional experience.
Yes.
Whereas a typical law student, even after graduation, may be difficult to find a job. So how do you find that? No, correct. And I think we have to be sensitive to that. But is there an opportunity for us to explore beyond what we typically define as internships?
Yeah.
And can universities take on some of those responsibilities?
Yes.
I can't find the example right now, but Dr. Sheikh talks about the university in the US, that the university employs the students during their life cycle. And they get something practical out of that, you know, whatever that may be, whether it's cleaning the canteen or, I don't know, I'm not sure of the details. Dr. Sheikh can give us a bit more about.
I think that is one example, but I want the colleagues from Rhodes University to say something about their service learning.
Okay.
Thanks.
You've been put on the spot. Rhodes, put your hands up. Okay, I'm coming to you.
There was something that you said, I wanted to comment on that, but it slipped me. If it comes back to me a bit later, I'll comment on it. But thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Okay, thank you. Yeah. I'll perhaps use this opportunity to also air my views around your thought-provoking presentation. So this got me thinking the structure of our bachelor programs, especially for traditional universities, the general formative degree structure, which to an extent, in the current context of the country, is a huge investment on students and their parents with the expectation of getting the on-the-job demand kind of skills that will immediately afford graduates the opportunity, in most instances of first-generation graduates from families, to get into active economic participation. But you get a BA anthropology and classics, for instance. What do you really do with that? Of course, you would need some kind of augmentation. But also, looking at the very changing nature of the workplace, can universities keep pace with, let's say, IT, for instance? By the time you complete your BA in computer science, most of the things that you learned is already obsolete. So it is a very tricky situation. Do we chase what is going on in terms of innovation, the actual demand, or do we remain true to the traditional forms of knowledge as a building block for preparation of young people to be able to be lifelong learners? Okay, so the issue of experiential learning at Rhodes University is a critical one. We have a very vibrant community engagement division. There are various forms of experiential learning, not in the traditional way of work-integrated learning you would get from a UOT. But now the debate is how could students be, their efforts in those areas be rewarded in terms of credit bearing towards their qualification. So we are looking at it, and there is the Intotozobom course organized from the Department of Philosophy, the Allen Gray Center for Leadership, a very, very, very interesting course that takes students out there into the community to face the real challenges of the surrounding community, the poverty in the area, the real issues, the bread and butter issues. So it's really very interesting, but we are having discussions and to see how we could incorporate these into our former B programs for credit bearing and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've reminded me of the point. Go back to the screen. So Dr. Plum raised this issue about why do students come and, do they know? And I want to almost use because I'm a father of 2 adult mature children, use almost a father figure type of understanding of how I think possibly we could approach it. I kept on using this term, you don't know what you don't know. And by the time that you realize that you don't know what you don't know, it may just be too late. And I think there is a responsibility on universities, on leaders, to find a way of sneaking in, and I'm going to use the word in a nice way, sneaking in some of these skills into the program. So when the student comes in, as far as he's concerned or she's concerned, they're doing whatever they're doing, and they must work as hard as they must achieve to get an A pass rate in law. But the other skills that they don't even know that they are learning, i.e. the soft skills, is the difference that we make to them, right? And those need not necessarily be printed in the prospectus. That when you register for a BCom at X, Y, and Z, we will also teach you soft skills and this and that, whatever. That is a responsibility on us because we know we want to make a difference to the lifelong learning journey, but also to the employability level and coping mechanism, everything else that goes with this sort of long list of soft skills. So if nothing else, this may be an oldish presentation and it may just be required for somebody to update this. But I think as a starting point, at the very minimum, educators we need to start looking at which of these or how many of these, ideally all of these, but how many of these am I putting into the system? Because at the end of it, you're going to come out, Lance, with an A pass. You're going to almost walk into that job, guaranteed. But then how do you start coping when you just happen to get a horrible boss? Or you go in your first day to court and the judge wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and decides to discipline you for something. How do you respond? How do you react? These are all the soft skills that you may not learn in a classroom in the theory of the coursework. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Hussein, for that thought-provoking presentation. And I think in one of your slides where you were looking at the definition, I think they mentioned quite a number of parameters that a successful graduate should have. And I think one of the challenges that we have as universities is how then do we ensure that our graduates, they do have that, and how then do we also assess? Because I think our challenge is as soon as the graduates leave, and then in most instances, and then we wash our hands off. So I've got two questions. So the first one is, you mentioned that for within the REGENT context, you are specifically using work-directed learning. Maybe if you can just expand a little bit in terms of how is that different from WIL, if maybe you can. But then also, have you guys, do you have any data or have you collected information on the self-assessment tool within the context of REGENT, just to be able to see in terms of, what stats are you coming up with? I think it was for me, I think that was quite interesting actually to see.
Thank you for that, yeah. I think I'm going to ask either Sarah or Dr. Blom to answer the first part in terms of the work-directed learning.
Can I?
And how we came to that sort of conclusion.
Okay. While I walk, I can touch a little bit on the work-directed learning. It actually started when I joined REGENT in January. I felt that we needed to sort of bring the various other initiatives or units into our curricula, our traditional curricula, because we do a lot of amazing things at REGENT. So I called a meeting and I said, okay, guys, this is the good practice guide from the CHE, and my colleagues were like, no, we're not doing it the CHE way. So I said, okay, we had a collaborative canvas, because I'm in Joburg and my colleagues are in Durban. We did a canvas where we put little sticky notes, everybody's ideas, and to give Dr. Blom credit, she coined the term work-directed learning. So WDL, the term comes from Dr. Blom, she'll touch on it in a moment. And we had decided we're not going to go the CHE route in what they define will to be. Their will, as according to the good practice guide, and I'm sure all of you have seen it, in our context is a modality. So we've taken theirs, the modality is called will, and then there are other modalities, problem-based learning and etc., are sub-modalities, you could say, of that modality. But we've expanded it. We've included virtual learning. That's a modality in our world, and etc. So, yeah, we're very unique in terms of how we want to approach it, because we realized from that meeting, each academic wants to approach this practical way of learning in a different way. And I didn't want to limit them in terms of their creativity and how they can actually bring about that practical element. That's why we created our own modalities. Dr. Blom.
Yeah, I think what we need to understand about will and other types of modalities in the system is that they come from very different traditions. And so what we commonly talk about of will is the kind of experiential learning that you told us about yesterday. And that works very well in universities of technology where it is technology-based. It is, that type of thing. But even there, it's not without a problem. Because even there, if the qualification requires you to do experiential learning as part of your certification, then the university must actually make sure that every student has the opportunity to get to a workplace. And we know from experience that UOTs can't. There's simply not enough workplaces. So that was kind of the driving force behind not wanting to go that route. But it's also more about, maybe I must just preface it. We had a project with a company outside of South Africa in terms of virtual internships. So this was mostly for graduates, and they were actually placed with a company virtually. All right? And so that's sort of where the idea of work-directed learning started, because they were not required to become an employee, but they were required to solve a work-directed problem. Mm-hmm. So the idea, and as I said, it is still relatively new. Hussein's program in terms of the High Certificate in Entrepreneurship is at the moment the only real example of how that is implemented. But the idea is to actually develop relationships, and in fact, I'm talking to somebody on Monday about that, with actual businesses who will provide us with real briefs. Okay? Here's a business problem. Here's an HR problem. Here's an accounting problem. Here's whatever is related to our degrees. So, and that then becomes a project-based learning, but it is a real project. It's not a case study. It's not something that we suck out of our thumbs. It's not something that comes out of a book. It's something that comes from a real business who has a real problem, and that then becomes the work-directed learning. Mm-hmm. And it's credit-bearing. It will be an assessment. It's credit-bearing, and it can even replace, in my view, it can replace an exam, a formal sit-down exam. And then we get to the kind of authentic assessment that we spoke about yesterday. Thanks.
No, thank you. And it was interesting, Dr. Masango, when you asked that question, I looked at Dr. Blom, she smiled. I looked at Uncle Hussein, he smiled. And I was like, we love our WDL. And I feel we're very proud for having come up with this unique way of approaching the practical component of curricula.
I don't know if you wanted to respond.
You forgot.
Oh, no, she wanted to say something. Do you want to respond first?
No. Carry on.
The first part. Okay, that's fine then. I just wanted to comment on the progress for UOTs. For us, when COVID hit, of course, we had to rethink our approach to work-directed learning. We offer quite a number of vocationally orientated qualifications as a UOT, and so we shifted to simulation. So we created the work environment for our students. Whereas a mobile application and web design student would be placed in industry. In this case, they form part of a project, and you would have a game jam, as you would set it up in industry, where they would showcase their specific designs, portfolio of evidence. We also explored combinations as well. So we also included those different modalities, where you would have problem solving and combine it with then your project-based learning. And out of that, of course, it's aligned to the purpose and the intentions of the program, but it has definitely pushed us to rethink how we would normally do things. And I do have to say that our staff is on board, and they've actually preferred this route, even post-COVID. And the good thing is that the CHE extended it, so we can do it for another year. So there's quite a number of ways to go about it, and I see that the CHE has also let institutions explain how they embed will in their programs, how they then assess the practical component, the theoretical part, and all of those things. So for us, as a public, we think we're doing quite good, right?
Great.
By the way, which institution?
We're
and your
at
name?
TUT.
TUT.
Yes.
And your name? You didn't tell us.
Oh, sorry, I'm Naledi. I'm the Quality Advisor in Accreditation.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
It's nice to hear that other institutions are also finding unique ways of approaching will. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
can I give our student a chance? Okay.
Morning, everyone. So I just want to add on the point that the sir said up there. So my question is, how can universities make sure that students are well equipped for the job industry, specifically humanities students? I myself am a major in anthropology and African languages and literature, which is mainly theory. So I'm asking this in relation to students whose intentions aren't to stay in the academy after their undergraduate degree, so they don't want to pursue masters and so forth, because I believe that humanities students are often, like left out of the conversation when it comes to preparing them for the job market. And this results in them being demotivated to do these courses. And I believe that these degrees matter, and there's so much more that one can do besides continuing with the academic career in the academy. So it's more of a question to the House, like how can universities make sure that this information and resources are available to students like me who aren't in practical courses? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think maybe the short answer is that we need to be creating forums and some way of engaging with students. A typical SRC may not be the answer because their mandate is different from individual needs of students, et cetera, right? But maybe a forum of sorts, deliberately created, not too dissimilar to what we had over the past 2 days, where we listened to the voices of students, their concerns, let the academics give their vision of what they think it needs to be done, let them sit on the other side and be critiqued in terms of have you thought of this, have you thought of that. So maybe one way of doing that is to sort of open up that curriculum design element beyond just the academics.
Just to read from the chats quickly, the value of will was again realized through this presentation. That's from Van. And Teruvini, I'm so sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly. She says soft skills must be integrated into the curricula. Responsibility lies with higher education institutions, leadership program, designers and developers, and I absolutely agree. Work integrated learning concepts. Well done to Regent, thank you very much. And 3, need to look at creative ways, simulations, virtual, need to capacity develop academic staff in these spaces. And I agree, I think that came out a lot in our discussions yesterday, to capacitate teaching staff so that these new ideas or approaches, they can actually facilitate them.
Actually, there's no need for this.
You wanted
She
to
just
comment.
articulated what I wanted to say.
Okay.
But the other one, we've got a tendency in South Africa of politicizing everything. There is this presidential graduate learnership programs that a few universities are running. We've got an opportunity to structure those programs to respond to specific university courses that are being offered, like she's saying, be it arts, be it non-practical programs. But now, okay, like this presidential thing, these kids are just getting 5,000 rands a month. Of course, it was introduced this year. I don't know how effective that is. But that is an opportunity for institutions to tailor-make that to address the issues of will, like she was explaining.
Thank you, sir.
You have another comment here, Dr. Chengwe?
Yeah, and sort of response to SAAIR as well. I think content and soft skills needn't be, in conflict. They're actually here. And theory and practice needn't be, and soft skills need to be in practice. It's all about kind of the assessments that you design. So in response to SAAIR, I'm also from the humanities, and having graduated with a humanities degree, after the graduation, I felt also, all I really knew is how to write an academic essay, and it wasn't really very applicable to the real world. So in my PhD, I looked at a kind of a multimodal approach to academic arguments. So getting students, so not only just to write an academic essay, but they can produce it in a different form. So like a video, comics, PowerPoint. So they get to engage in those soft skills through the assessment. So they're still engaging the theory and the concept, but it's through the form of assessment, they can learn group work through that. And that's how we kind of learn the soft skills through the content. So if we can think about like different ways of presenting knowledge, different ways of assessing that can incorporate the soft skills, group project thinking, and I think those will kind of enable students to be prepared to have transferable skills which they can take out to the working world.
Do you want to respond? There was another comment at the back. Okay.
Thank you. I think the previous speaker, the immediate previous speaker, has captured my mind on most of the issues. I'm not going to... but there is a program I did at Stellenbosch University. It is a postgraduate diploma in information systems management. I enrolled in that program expecting, information systems, real technical issues. But I discovered that the program was actually designed by philosophers. And it's quite interesting because any problem at all that you're trying to solve is a knowledge question. And if you are not adequately exposed to the core epistemological background of what it means to know and what it means to ask the right questions from a philosophical point of view. If you can have all the technical IT skills and exposure, it boils down to who asks the right questions. Yesterday, the presentation, one of the high marks was looking at how Elon Musk does his things. And if you look at it deeply, you'll find that Elon Musk is simply a questioner. Until you begin to ask the right questions and begin to find answers, ask repeatedly, continue to find answers and fail and fail. And if you look at it, in summary, it's a philosophical issue. It's not even a technical issue. So our curriculum design is the key. Infuse the aspects of critical question asking, aspects of entrepreneurial, skills that match with trying to answer a question. And in that way, no matter what you study, whether anthropology, philosophy, theology, or whatever, I still believe a lot in those traditional knowledge forms. Those are the basis for every other thing, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. If I can go into the Padlet, and thank you to our colleagues who have been engaging with it. Your first question was, what are the top 5 attributes you look for in employees? And somebody answers, the ability to function in a team system. And somebody answered the question, are the first century attributes universal or understood the same way in different countries? And in brackets, Ubuntu. Yes, I think so. Soft skills, people skills, teamwork, creativity, all of that is universal, and I also agree. The third question was, is there a difference between invention and innovation? I thought that was a good question. And what about creativity? And somebody responded, not sure, with a sad face. Is there really interest in collaboration between institutions? Somebody responded, yes, definitely. And I think such a forum shows that we are interested in collaborating. Given what we know about South Africa's economy, are working internships viable? Somebody responded, not enough, not nearly enough. And the last question, how can we incorporate or integrate 21st century skills into the curriculum? Creativity, design thinking, problem-solving skills, teamwork must be part of curriculum, in particular, incorporated in the way we assess. Assessment is really coming out more and more. But thank you for your for engaging with the Padlet. All the Padlets, even from yesterday, are still open, so engage with them. And let's give Mr. Hussein a hand clap for him.
If anyone wants baked beans, let me know. Thank you.
Oh, we've got another comment in the chat. Agree that soft skills should be incorporated in assessment. Integrated summative assessment tasks, module level, program level, are significant in assessing students' ability to apply acquired knowledge and skills. And I agree. And a few people also commended you, Uncle Hussein, on your presentation. It was excellent. I know he was quite concerned, but we were like, no, we want you to do this one because of his involvement with the Red Hub and the higher certificate that we mentioned earlier. And he did great, didn't he? Yes, he did. So we at Regent, a few of us call him Uncle Hussein, so don't mind if I say that. It's out of respect. All right, so we're going to take a little break, but I actually wanted to just touch on this. I felt like I did an injustice to the recap this morning because I was trying to give more time to the discussions. Okay, Lisa is saying something and... Okay. So she says she'll go through it in her summary, so I don't have to stress myself for now. But let's take a brief break, everybody, 15 minutes, and we'll return. So those in the auditorium, just step out. There's tea, coffee there, and our colleagues online, just stretch your legs, go to the kitchen, boil the kettle, and come back in 15 minutes. Okay, not yet. Okay, is it on? Our colleagues online, can you hear me? Thumbs up, please. You'll know the drill now. I want to make sure that you can hear me. I don't see any thumbs. What's happening? Yes, put dancing people in the chat if you can hear me. I like this one. Goodness, my things have disappeared here on this phone. Phew. The thumbs up are coming up. Okay, sorry, something went technically wrong with my phone. So welcome back. We're going to continue with our session. And a few of the colleagues at CUT and myself last night were discussing this, that the working professional looks very different now. And our next presenter is a really cool guy, and in my view is a pioneer of how a working professional will look like in the 21st century. Literally, he's covered in beautiful tattoos, and it's such a pity that he's not here for you to see them. But Dr. Mario sends the message that you can be an academic professional and a creative at the same time. And isn't that what Dr. Karen said in her one presentation? We now need to stand on the table to get a different perspective. That means a lot of things are going to change. The working professional is no longer the traditional one in a suit and a tie. So as he prepares, or we get him on the screen, I don't know if Dr. Mario is ready, I'll just speak a little bit about him. So Dr. Mario is an academic management professional with an extensive experience in the higher education sector, having worked in various management positions over the last 15 years. His areas of expertise include academic design and development, faculty development, quality assurance, regulatory compliance, student support, online distance education, and digital transformation strategy. Mario is a frequent contributor to conferences and publications on matters pertaining to digital literacy, user end for education, online distance education, and Mode 2 knowledge production. He is currently the Dean of Design at the Da Vinci Institute for Technology Management. He will present on the topic, Do Innovative Ideas Equal Quality Learning Experience, and how do we know this? So before we show his presentation, can we show Dr. Mario? Let everybody see Dr. Mario, and can you wave at us? So wave back. Thank you for joining us. So take it away.
Just like that. Thank you very much, Sarah, for the introduction.
Wait, hold on, Dr. Mario. Let's just fix the sound. We can't really hear him in the auditorium. Just hold on a second.
No worries.
Okay? Say something.
Something.
Okay, that's better. Go ahead.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you very much for that introduction. I was really hoping my tattoos would not be mentioned because people look at the tattoos and don't listen to what I say. So I'm hoping that my presentation would be sufficiently engaging. Thank you very much for the invitation. My sincere apologies that I couldn't be there in person. I'm currently shackled to my desk, literally and figuratively, in preparation for traveling that I have to do for the rest of the month. So unfortunately, I could not take the break to join you. My presentation today, or the question that I was asked to try and address through my presentation, like Sarah introduced, is do innovative ideas equal a quality learning experience, and how do we know it has? Now, I position my response in regards to an emerging phenomenon. So we have been conducting a longitudinal study over the last few years since the advent of COVID. We've got running surveys between faculty, with students, a lot of desktop research being done. Like Sarah said, I've been frequenting the conference circuit internationally and locally to get a sense of what the common issues are as a result of the implementation of a slew of new technology. So I don't think there's ever been such an eruption in technology, specifically teaching and learning technologies, as we've seen over the last year. And like they said, it's because of necessity. So necessity is the mother of invention. So we've seen a lot of contact institutions migrating into the online space, very quickly realizing that emergency remote teaching is not sustainable. You can't engage students for 8 hours at a time online, then moving into the hybrid space, some even moving into the e-learning space. And the conversation currently with the HEQC, or the discourse that they're trying to promote, is, will we ever be able to go back to a fully face-to-face type of intervention, or has the world forever changed? But in this migration, this rapid migration, someone was mentioning earlier, I think it was a student comment, that this migration, these introductions of these technologies happen too quickly. There wasn't really a time to assess whether they are adequate, whether they would perform in the way that we want them to perform and get the results, the engagement, the throughput, etc., that we were expecting from it. So some common challenges that were identified is, when institutions made this migration, they did not fully understand what the technological and infrastructure requirements are. Their faculty were not ready, they were not adaptable. And I'm speaking in absolute terms, but obviously there are a lot of variances. These are just common issues that arose. Literacy is a very common issue. Attitudes, lecturers treating the scenario as an interim scenario. And we know that psychologically, if you say to someone, we are doing this until that happens, or this is an interim arrangement, students don't buy into it. So a lot of psychological power play to be considered there. And then where the students were simply ready in regard to the literacies and attitudes that they had available to them. This sort of translates into common developmental areas such as rapid infrastructure acquisition and redesign. Institutions having to acquire the ability to very rapidly redesign their teaching and learning interventions, select and incorporate the correct technologies, selecting the correct technologies, and then literacy development. And that's what I want to focus on today, because I think out of all of these, the issue of literacies has come to the forefront as one of the main inhibitors for institutions to really realize the value of their investments in these technological solutions. Reskilling of faculty, and then also something that is new to the education space is an R&D type of functionality, where institutions could create a space where they can apply design thinking to the products, the academic products that they are developing, to ensure that they put that initial thought into it before it goes into the sort of a production phase and students have access to it, and you have all of this resistance and all of this drama that I think has already been touched on. So I want to focus specifically on the issue of literacy, and that's not a spelling mistake. Literacy is something that has emerged now to try and explain why digital natives, millennials, why we expected them to cope with this change much better than they actually had. So it was mentioned at the end of 2020, just very briefly, an offhand comment at the OEB conference, a big e-learning conference in Belgium, that this looks like a form of literacy. Now, I had to go and Google it, and unfortunately Google is not your friend when it comes to the term literacy, because it's a very old term and it keeps correcting the spelling. But literacy is a thing, and we need to, before we get into the issue of digital literacy, we just need to understand very quickly what literacy means. So literacy is a 17th century concept. If you studied the life of Shakespeare, and I heard that there's some humanities students in the audience there, they would tell you that in his early life he studied letters. So that is how the education system worked. You studied letters, in other words, the coding of words into sentences, or letters into words, words into sentences, the physical act of reading, but there is absolutely no interpretation involved. It is definitely primarily a focus on a mechanical action. There is no real coding or decoding that happens, and as a result of very little meta-linguistic awareness. So the teaching of the letters and the teaching of the interpretation, the metalinguistic components that we now do as sort of ideally, and there are some critique around the contemporary secondary education system, or primary and secondary education systems, was completely removed, interestingly enough. And this concept was revived in the 1970s to critique the graduates that were coming out of the American secondary schooling system, to show that what they are coming out with is not really a form of literacy, but of literacy. Now, in contrast to literacy, literacy is an additional step, and that step implies that students, it says that literacy is more closely aligned with meaning deduction, creation than, more aligned with meaning deduction and creation than with coding and decoding of letters and words. And interestingly enough, even if you are illiterate in the sense that you can't read, recognize letters or words, you could still apply meta-linguistic awareness. So that's an interesting distinction there, that literacy is not really a development on literacy is not really a development on literacy, but it is also, it also functions separately from literacy. So you could be literate, believe it or not, without knowing how to read. The example that was given there by Postman and Weingartner is that literacy is to reading what mathematics is to counting. So what that relationship looks like. And it specifically then means the ability to analyze linguistic propositions, evaluate them, and correlate them with reality. Now, what does all of this have to do with digital literacy? So we were assuming that when we made all of these technologies available, when we infused our curricula with blended, multi-hybrid methodologies, that these digital natives, these individuals that grew up with the internet, that grew up with social media, would latch onto it and would be able to navigate it effectively. But what the research is now showing is that these digital natives are, although deeply immersed in communication technologies, are not digitally literate. So what we found absent from that, the skill set that they are bringing to education, is their inability to study in a self-guided way, their inability to deconstruct and reconstruct content across multiple channels, information curation and management, which is key to the contemporary education space, the inability to experiment, and the lack of creative application, and also social learning. So being tech savvy then does not automatically translate into effective learning, especially across multiple digital platforms. So tool mastery, the ability to work the internet, to work a computer, to work Moodle, the LMS, etc., does not then automatically translate into meaningful engagement across these platforms. And very interestingly, there's a running survey on absolute.com that has been running since the start of COVID to sort of monitor what the effect is of this migration into digital education. And something that they showed at the time that I drew the statistic, and it's constantly fluctuating, says that 83% of millennials are considered to be technologically proficient. But of that 83%, only 58%, or 58% of them, in other words, the majority of them, have very poor skills in solving problems with technology. And the problem at the end of the day is that the way that students learn about technology, if you think about the way that media is consumed, the way that the rise of e-commerce, of social media that has such a large commercial component to it now, what these students are actually learning is how to become consumers. It's a promotion of a consumer mentality as opposed to a creator mentality. Right. So, in addition to the desktop research, keeping an eye on the literature, keeping an eye on what happens in the conferences, right at the beginning of COVID, the Da Vinci Institute was required to make a radical shift. We literally had to make a shift within 3 days, going from a sort of a hybrid model that had a large dependency on a face-to-face workshop environment type of intervention, and having to translate that into the online space 100% in the span of a couple of days. Luckily, we foresaw this change, the necessity of this change, as a result of commentary that came out of re-accreditation processes, and we already had a model parked. A new LMS system, a new design methodology, a new delivery methodology parked and ready to go, so we were able to make that transition very quickly. But because it, like everybody else in the world, we had to do it within days or within months, if you were lucky enough to have that time span to work on, we did not have the luxury of testing this fully before it went into market. So the alternative arrangement then was we had to find a way to continuously monitor what was happening. So we built a lot of sort of live survey type of interventions that runs on each course page on the LMS, surveys that are running in the MS Team sessions, open surveys that we're running for faculty, just to see how this adaptation happens and whether there are small changes that we could make to the model to ease the adaptation of this particular delivery methodology, which was now fully online. So just one aspect that I wanted to touch on that I felt provided us with the best information, because students, like I think Hussein said, you don't know what you don't know. So there was a lot of sort of resistance initially, but not a lot of rich data in how we could improve the experience. But faculty members, being more experienced in matters of pedagogy, etc., were able to give us a bit more feedback that was usable. And so we had this open survey that is still running, and faculty come and go, new faculty, old faculty, they repeatedly complete the survey. So we've got continuous updating on the survey to give us a sense of what the current experience is. So just 2 or 3 things that I wanted to highlight out of these surveys. So we asked faculty, what are the essential abilities that a digitally literate student should have in their estimation? And what is interesting that over the last 2 years, while change management has taken place and adaptation has taken place, we are still seeing very little shift in the priorities that lecturers identified here. Firstly, they still feel that there is, despite, again, the nature of the students that we are dealing with, there is still a lack of functional technical proficiency. Just how to physically work a laptop, how to solve problems, things hanging, connection to the internet, those type of things, hardware problems were still very much an issue. Digital scholarship, how to do research. So all of a sudden, while our institute historically had 0 problems with plagiarism, literally 0, just because of our teaching and learning approach, which focuses very much on application of learning within unique workplace context, we all of a sudden saw an upsurge in plagiarism because of a lack of understanding in regard to how academic integrity is applied in digital scholarship. Again, a lot of challenges around independence and self-guided learning. We've done away with that large component of synchronous engagement, and students had a real challenge to go from a facilitator-led type of intervention to a self-led intervention, and then also e-safety, how just to conduct yourself in an online space in a way that protects your identity and safeguards you from cyberbullying. So that was the first question. The second question we asked, what are the abilities, the absent abilities that these lecturers were observing? So the first question, just as a reminder, in their estimation, what do they think a digitally literate student should come with? The second question was, now that they've come to the course, they are in the course, what are we observing as being absent? So independence and self-guided learning, again, very big issues that we've consistently had to address through numerous interventions. Issues of digital research or digital scholarship, how to source valid information, all of a sudden an upsurge in students cutting and pasting sections from popular art or secular articles into assignments and research projects. We had to then develop these interventions to focus more strongly on how to source, select, and qualify information for the use for scholarly purposes. And critical thinking. All of a sudden, because you are removing the student from this sort of enhanced, or the word escapes me now, from a scenario where they could draw on lectures and on peers more readily, we are seeing that there is a real challenge around critical thinking, how to analyze problems correctly, interpret assessment briefs, and the like. Another question we asked was, if you could rate in order of difficulty, what were the technologies that we've now included in this new delivery packet that students struggle with most? And surprisingly, the number one technology that students struggle with and continue to struggle with is the online library and databases. So the likes of EBSCOs, and we make a few others available, but just again, how to navigate them. They're not always very user-friendly. So this helped us to develop initiatives where we would have sessions with our library information officer at a regular interval so that students can master those particular skills, incorporating that into curriculum design. So within the classroom environment, having students look up information in a sort of a synchronous way. The navigation and management of a learning management system. Prior to COVID, students went onto the LMS purely to download a guide and upload an assessment. Now all of their engagements, their primary engagements, is between them and the resources that we curate for them. So navigating that system, getting real value out of it, using it for activities, peer activities, etc., has proven challenging, and these are also things that we've now had to address systematically over the last couple of years. I mean, the same thing happens on the collaboration platform. So in our model, we've got Moodle, which is largely for asynchronous interventions, although there are synchronous interventions there, like the chats and the forums, etc., that students participate in. But everything else is delayed. Screencasts, multimedia resources, prepared guides, etc. All of that is asynchronous intervention. So while that was a challenge, it was equally challenging for students to learn how to conduct themselves within MS Teams, where primarily our synchronous engagements happen. So you had this very quick, and I think everybody picked it up, the sort of a back of a bus scenario where students would sort of try and hide away. So lecturers and students had to be effectively trained on how to make these sessions more engaging. And we also did away with the whole concept of these workshops, which we call tuition support sessions, to be content rich. They were not meant to be content rich. The content sits on the LMS. These sessions were emphasized for the use of engagement and collaboration, and to discuss rather than to convey knowledge, etc. So how they conduct themselves in that space was also a particular issue that was identified by faculty. So how do we then, given this bit of knowledge that we now have, this experience that we've been able to document, how do we move our students from being digitally literate to being fully digitally literate? The first thing we had to do was to look very critically at our digital literacy module. So modules that was typically offered as part of onboarding, they were once off, they quickly ran through the different technologies and how they are used, and we just did not get sufficient success from those interventions. So the first thing we had to do was, in addition to those once-off interventions, build in more interventions through the delivery of a module and through the academic year, but also make sure that faculty incorporate the use of these technologies within their delivery. Digital literacy is now, while I mean it's always had a knowledge base associated with it, we had to critically look at that knowledge base to make sure that when we present these digital literacy modules, that we adequately address the challenges that I was referring to earlier. So where we previously would focus primarily on technical proficiency, we made sure now that as part of that technical proficiency, we have an equal focus on learning competencies. And that then is re-emphasized in the delivery of academic modules. So with a technical proficiency, we would focus on navigation, e-security, problem probing, peer operating within a peer support environment, e-conduct and behaviors. The learning competencies had a stronger focus on e-learning skills, which included the scholarly aspects we were referring to, how to evaluate and judge information, critical thinking, decision-making, creativity, and then very importantly, the ability to deconstruct information and reconstruct it for other purposes. So the main sort of learning here is that for an effective digital literacy development strategy, you can no longer just focus on the technical proficiency and assume that the learning competencies are already in place. This is all, of course, informed by the TPAC model, and I'm always amazed by the TPAC model because it is so old. It comes from the very dawn of e-education. It is literally so old that no one can attribute authorship to it. And it from that space, from those very, very early rudimentary beginnings of e-learning and online learning, already was able to predict what effective online engagement would look like. We recently had a doctoral candidate from the Gauteng Department of Education that was explaining why certain technological introductions into the secondary schooling system failed because they were not properly adhering to this very fundamental model. And this model basically just says that whenever you introduce a technology, it has to be supported by the content, in other words, the subject matter expertise, in addition to the pedagogy. So in normal speak, the technology or technologies, and those are not just the platforms, they are the apps we use, they are the processes we teach. All of that has to be supported by the curriculum. It has to be incorporated in the curriculum. It cannot stand by itself and has to be supported by the teaching and learning approach of the institution. And they cannot function separately. These three spheres need to move in unison. And the aim is to move into a space where they overlap and there is synergy between the actual module content, the essential knowledge areas of particular courses, the teaching and learning approach of the institute, whether it's blended or hybrid or whatever the case is, and then the technological platforms and teaching and learning technologies, whether they are peripherals or hardware that are used in delivery. In the Gauteng Department of Education example, for instance, they were citing initiatives where they were giving laptops to teachers, but the laptop as a teaching tool was not supported by the curriculum, and the lecturers did not have the know-how to translate their SME knowledge into a digital representation. So the entire thing fell flat. So if nothing else is taken from today, I would urge you to revisit this particular model, because I think everything that we need to know about how to develop a effective digital learning approach is housed herein. Right, so to sum up, and I think I'm right on time, to sum up, what are the general principles that we would like to consider when we develop digital literacy development strategies or design digital literacy development strategies? The first being that you should create authentic learning opportunities enhanced with technology. So that combination of using the technology in context, I think, is critically important. And that is what I was referring to earlier, that we teach students, for instance, how to use MS Word, but we don't teach them how to use MS Word to capture their references and structure their references accurately within a research module. So that type of learning within context should be emphasized. The position of a lecturer as technology champion. So we very early on developed a set of laws for e-education. Now there's so much information available, tips and tricks for e-educators, but we wanted 4 or 5 things. We settled on 4 things that we felt was critically important for students that are used to face-to-face intervention or lecturers that are used to face-to-face intervention to master as they are taking on the personality or the new identity of an e-educator. And one of the critical things here was that you cannot be seen to be fumbling with the technology. You can't be seen to not be master of your domain. So the old adage that by pure virtue of putting someone in front of a class, you are imbuing them with all the knowledge that they require and they are master in that particular domain. That relationship in a digital space is very, very fragile. Because the moment you come across as not literate in these spaces, not being able to effectively use the technologies, having courseware that is very limited in the application of these technologies, doing the absolute bare minimum, it's absolutely pointless and does not serve the current purposes. Interventions must be holistic, and we're referring to digital literacy interventions with a focus on interrelatedness of skills and technologies, as I've explained in a previous slide, and very much to avoid standalone interventions. I think, if anything, that is also a critical bit of learning that came out of the last 2 years. You can't pop a digital literacy module at the beginning of an academic program and then assume students would have completely absorbed all of that content and have the ability to apply it, to deconstruct it and reconstruct it for different purposes as required by different academic modules. Very strong focus on digital citizenship. I was smiling earlier, I heard everybody use the word guys. One of the things that I learned very early on in these type of live interventions is that we can no longer use the word guys. It was very quickly pointed out by one of the students that in a gender, as an education institution, we should promote gender neutrality, and therefore that's an inappropriate way to greet students. So it all deals with the rights. So with more time being spent online, students are becoming more aware of their rights. They are becoming more aware of conduct, of what bullying could look like, and discrimination, even though it could be very subtle, like using the word guys to greet a group of cisgender and other gender identifications within a classroom, and then to actively apply the principles of student experience management. So we've got so much data available to us that we didn't have previously. Previously, a student came to class or he didn't come to class. He passed an assessment, he didn't pass an assessment. But now, because so much time is spent on the platforms like MS Teams and Moodle, for instance, Blackboard, Canva, all of these LMSs, we can now track what students access, how long they spend on it, what is their level of engagement. We can even track their mood through plugins like MS Reflect, which was launched last year. So we've got so much more data available to us that we can use to better inform the delivery methodology. For instance, one of the key things that we launched recently is Page IQ, and what that does is it gives us a sense of where students focus on a particular course page. So it creates heat maps, and you will see that a lot of heat happens at the top of the page, but not so much at the bottom of the page. So that just tells you that if you want to convey critical information, put it at the top of the page. Very, very simple things, but we have a vastness of data that is now available to us, in addition to performance data that can be used to customize and completely tailor the holistic delivery methodology to make sure that you have ultimate student engagement. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the end of my presentation. Sarah, right on 30 minutes.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, is this better? Ooh. Okay. Maybe I should move away. Thank you, Dr. Mario, for that presentation. Does that sound better? Oh, gosh, sorry about that, guys. When I first saw his abstract when he submitted, I was like, this is different. And I'm not sure about you guys, but I didn't know that there was a difference between digital literacy and literacy. I'll have to admit that I learned something new today from this presentation. So now we're going to open up for discussions. As usual, you put up your hand if you want to say anything. If at the back, Ahmed, can we have a view give him a view of the audience, so if anyone puts up their hand, he can see. And Dr. Mario, can you see the chat, and if anyone raises their hand on Teams, you can just call that person out, since you're in front of your laptop, yes? Did you hear me, Dr. Mario?
I missed the last 5 seconds of what you said.
Oh, I was saying that you have access to the chat and you can see if anyone raises their hands on Teams. So
I absolutely do.
Okay, all right. Please give him a view of the audience, and let's fix his sound so we can hear him during the Q&A. All right, you can start. Any questions for him? I mean, we all learned something new today. I would assume. Let me not speak for everybody. I did. Comments, questions? I can't see the online right now. Okay, I'll start with the comment from our colleague online who's thanking Dr. Mario. That was a fascinating presentation which really brought some aspects, not really thought about much before. It has challenged some preconceived ideas I've had. And Lisa also commented, very interesting presentation indeed. And I have to agree, because traditionally for many years, all students had to know is to read. So literacy, that's what you needed to know. Now you need to know digital literacy, very different. So we have a student comment here. I hope that Dr. Mario hasn't dropped the call and can see.
No, I'm with you, I'm with you.
Okay. Okay. Can you switch on the blue mic, please?
Okay, this is not a question, but more of a comment. I found something really interesting in the slide.
Run away from the camera, it's like, let me just sit on the stage. You talk.
So it mentions that tech savvy does not automatically translate into effective online learning engagement across platforms. And I have to agree with that, because I think we're also owed to unpack the concept of digital native, in which context and regard. I mean, in social media for sure, but it's different having to utilize technology for professional and formal purposes and social media, because I mean, during COVID, it was ironic that the academics and lecturers actually had better navigation of Microsoft Teams, Zoom, the student portals, you know, but we are known to be the digital natives. I definitely feel like social media is easier to navigate because you find that sometimes students can't even utilize the nitty-gritties of Word document, like creating a table of contents or turning a Word document into a PDF, you know. So just a thought on what is exactly a digital native, in which context does it apply to? I don't think it applies to everything that has to do with tech.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. It doesn't have to, or doesn't necessarily mean that it's technology. Okay. Dr. Masang, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lindman, for that excellent presentation. You are mentioning something critical in terms of our intervention of saying it should not be sort of like a once-off. So maybe in your opinion, if maybe you can share with us, based on your experience, what would be the ideal, time frame for us as universities to intervene in terms of supporting our students in terms of upskilling them, with digital literacy? And then the second question has to do with the survey findings from absolute.com. Is that a global survey, or the 58% that you are mentioning that the millennials have poor skills in solving problems using technology, is that figure also the same within our context here in South Africa? Thank you.
I'm not sure. Sorry, maybe thank you for those questions. If I could answer the last one first. I'm not sure. I felt, following the OEB conference of 2020, maybe just to contextualize it in a minute. So my assumption was that South Africa was very much a different space, that we had different challenges and that our adoption of these technologies would be slower or be more challenged, etc. So at the OEB conference in 2020, they had these snapshots, geographical snapshots. So there was an African snapshot, there was a UK snapshot, there was an Eastern European snapshot, there was a Australasia snapshot, and a Eastern snapshot. So in these snapshot sessions, they would have 4 or 5 chancellors from very well-respected universities in these spaces, and they would speak about the challenges and what was happening over that year, the first year of COVID. And almost verbatim, across the world, everybody was experiencing exactly the same thing. Access to data, technological infrastructure, design issues, adoption of literacies and behaviors by both students and faculty. So I came then, as part of this discussion, came across Absolutely.com's survey, which at that point almost had, I think, 250,000 people participate in it. So I felt that because, very surprisingly, our experience in South Africa was very, very common to what they were experiencing and what we perceived to be first world or developed countries like the UK and Australia, etc., that there would still be relevance that came out of that particular survey. So I hope that answers you. It's an American company, so I'm assuming most of those participants would come from an American context, but like I said, I still felt that there was some value in it because we didn't have something similar that was running in South Africa, and the South African experience in relation to what the rest of the world was experiencing at that point was very much aligned. All right, so just to answer you on your first question, my recommendation is the following. You still need that initial module. So in that initial module, you lay out the sort of a landscape, focusing both on the technical competencies as well as the learning competencies. So that's my first thing. Like I said, everybody's got a version of a digital literacy module, but it's got a very large focus on the technologies and how to work with technologies, and that is literacy, that's not literacy. So the literacy component comes in when you show how those the basic skills related to those technologies are used in an academic context. So that's the first thing, is that initial module, initial workshop, whatever is the case in your institution, must have both of those components. The second thing is we made digital literacy workshops available that students could participate in whether they want to or not. So they've got very specific focuses. It's published a year in advance. It's on our website. Students, whether they are waiting to start a cohort or whether they are already in a program, would know that there's a workshop and it focuses specifically on this one skill, whether it is something that pertains to literacy, something that pertains to a very specific technical components, in other words, how to use EBSCOhost, how to do referencing in Word, or whatever the case is. And we've seen a huge uptake in those in those workshops. So they are open to anybody. They are not specific to any qualification or any level. We often have students in there that are busy with their doctorates, as well as students in there that are busy with higher certificates. They get equal value from it because those skills are applicable across the board. So that's the second thing. First thing, digital workshop, but having both of these components to ensure that you deal with the literacy aspect as well. Standalone short interventions that are running across an academic year every 2 weeks. And the point of those workshops is to focus on very specific skills. And then thirdly, and I think most importantly, is that you would need to sit with faculty and say, well, when we discuss this in digital literacy, how will you be able to use it in your module? So again, a simple example that if there's a writing class, for instance, or a research class, how do you telling them how to do research, you are giving them research projects, but are you showing them how those skills, the research skills, utilizes the digital literacy skills? So things like how to do referencing, things like how to validate resources that are found online, things like how to rate resources, how to determine if a resource is a primary observation on the phenomenon or if that observation is 20 times removed from the original observation. Those are the things you continuously need to draw back. So to illustrate it simply, if your curriculum on digital literacy has, let's say, 10 outcomes, in each of your academic modules that follow, you need to continuously draw on those outcomes to make sure that they are demonstrated and utilized within specific academic modules. So that integration, I think, is absolutely key. I hope that answers both questions.
Oh, thank you. There's another comment just behind you, the gentleman behind you.
Thank you, Dr. Mario. I would just like to know whether your study also came to the same findings. Once read a research paper that says majority of, I would say, African young population, even if you give them the laptop plus the data, they behave different from what the first world youngsters will do. What Africans mostly do is they download, say, music or games, whereas their first world counterparts will either use it for study or try and come up with some business or innovative way to use it. So I just want to know whether you came to the same conclusion. The usage is different, due to lack of literacy. Thank you.
Well, I would be very hesitant. Thank you for that question, and it's something that I've got a lot of experience on. I was involved in the original Laptops for Teachers program and Laptops for Students program back in 2005 all the way to 2009, and then there was a Tablets for Students, and all of these projects failed miserably for exactly the reasons you've cited now. Having then moved into higher education, where we were serving over 80,000 students, which we made laptops and data available to, only to find that they are using the data cards that we gave them in their cell phones, and they are downloading all kinds of nonsense. And when it comes to the actual academic purposes, then they don't have data available, machines are broken, machines are stolen. I would be very hesitant to attach that to a specific racial demographic. I think it has something to do with digital literacies and not understanding how these tools are meant to achieve certain outcomes. So how that was solved partially, you're always going to have this challenge. You're never going to fix it 100%. We still have that challenge now in 2022 with students. But how you fix that is to make sure that students cannot progress. They cannot meet the outcomes of an academic program if they don't work online. If they don't work on the LMS, if they don't participate in the workshops, then they cannot meet the objectives of those programs. So if your learning methodology requires a student to log on to Moodle at the beginning of a quarter, download a guide, and then log on at the end to upload an assignment, they're going to use that data and that laptop for something else. But if your delivery methodology requires them to participate in forum discussions, chats, tuition support sessions, get critical content and feedback on assessment submission, screencast, everything else that they need to meet or to use to meet the outcomes of a program, you would see a complete shift in behavior, because they would quickly realize that if I don't have data or don't have access, I can't participate in class, that's going to translate into a failure for me, so I need to adjust my behavior accordingly. Not going to be able to fix it 100%, but that in the space where I'm currently at, the previous space all the way back to 2009, when we first introduced Moodle as part of a delivery methodology, that is how we remedied that particular issue.
No, thank you. We have one last comment from one of our students. Dr. Karen, go ahead.
So I just have it's not really a question, but I thought to maybe ponder, maybe the CHE and the DBE, if they're listening, can ponder on this. But I think one of the biggest things is to think about at what level and with whom does the responsibility lie to ensure that students are digitally literate. Does it fall to the universities, or does it need to come in a little bit earlier in school? Because the gentleman over there was discussing how some students will see a computer, want to download games and music, but it's because that computer is a novelty. It's this brand new thing that they've never been exposed to, and they want to do all the fun stuff, and they're not fully aware of the opportunities that lie in that device. And whose fault is that? Is it because our basic education is not bringing that in, and by the time they get to varsity, they are not fully literate on how they can use that device, what that can do for them, nor do they have the skills that are required to utilize that to its full potential. So I think a very essential thing is to wonder, is it too late to be making people digitally literate third year when you need to know how to Harvard reference? Or do we need to be bringing it in much earlier, where it can actually make a pivotal difference in students' lives and ultimately the workforce?
No, definitely.
Yeah, Michael, I think that's a very true observation, and my comments on that would be, obviously would be ideal if it could be brought in at secondary level. Research I was referring to earlier, and I'm aware of several other research projects that was done at doctoral level that examined exactly this phenomenon. And it is often, then it comes back to the TPAC model, because there is a much larger issue. So you are giving people laptops, but the use of that laptop is not necessitated in the curriculum design. So the curriculum does not say, at this point we are doing a lookup on Moodle or a lookup on Google. What is your findings there recorded here? We are not doing that type of integration at all at secondary level. And I think to facilitate that type of integration is going to cost gazillions. It is upskilling of faculty. It is investing in resources. Also, due to the infrastructure issues in South Africa, companies are donating millions of laptops to schools that don't have access to the internet. So the two go hand in hand, and that just escalates a problem. I think because of these issues that we have zero control over, I think primarily the responsibility sits with higher education, and that we need to identify or at least understand what the requirements are of digital literacy right at the very beginning, and develop initiatives to upskill students in that regard throughout the curriculum. Not a single initiative, continuous initiatives, and very strong emphasis on the integration of these skills into academic programs. So yeah, very big question there.
Okay, am I back on? Thank you, Dr. Mario. Just to actually respond to Isetu's comment earlier, believe it or not, when we switched to emergency remote learning, even our academics didn't know how to use Teams. I remember for 2 weeks having to support my academics because they just couldn't do it. So it's so interesting that we expect our students, and this came out in discussion yesterday, we expect our students to use the tools we give them, yet ourselves we don't know how to use them. So I think we all need more training, whether you're a student or a part of the teaching staff. And thank you, Dr. Landman. Dr. Mario, is he still there? For that lovely presentation and teaching us something we may not have considered or even really thought about. This is a different way of learning, so we really need to pay attention to the literacy or the needed skills in order to perform. And I actually liked a point that you brought out in your presentation. User adoption does not always mean user adaption. And I think that's the challenge we're all having in our various institutions. And it's spot on. Just because, for example, I'm a millennial, I'm expected to know how to use technology, right? But it doesn't mean that I actually have all the necessary skills. Maybe the people with the problem-solving technology skills is AMA 2000s, our students. Maybe they can teach us something that we don't know. And with that, I want to invite our students back. Our excellent students, as Michael Gordon called them, for the last part of our formal session. Guys, come, let's talk like we did yesterday. Because as Dr. Karen mentioned, for example, in the matter of research, we expect them at third year to know how to reference, but we haven't taught them from the beginning. And we also brought this out in discussions yesterday, the gap between leaving high school and coming into higher education. There really is a gap that we need to fill. Maybe we can't fill it, but it's a conversation we need to start having. So guys, welcome back. It's us. I thought you were gonna vlog, you were gonna go live. What happened? Digital literacy affected him negatively, so he couldn't come back online. Okay, if you say so, I'll believe you. So guys, there was a question Dr. Blom asked. I think it was Dr. Blom earlier. So before I get your general comments on everything that we've discussed these 2 days, tell me, we'll start with Lance. Actually, for those who maybe don't know the students, we introduced them yesterday, but let me just run through it again. We have Lance from Regent Business School, our BCom law student. We have Kula from Rosebank College, who's doing a diploma in IT management. We have Isetu from the University of Cape Town, who's doing an honors in African languages and anthropology. Am I right?
African languages and literature.
Okay, sorry, that was your other qualification. Oh, okay, sorry, my bad. And we have Dr. Karen, who is a graduate from DUT. She is a practicing chiropractic, so if you need to get an adjustment during lunch, can you offer free consultations? So thank you for joining us again. And I want to ask you this question. I want each of you to answer it. Why did you choose the program that you're enrolled in?
You said you started with me.
Yes, start with you.
Why?
Yes, why?
Why? I would say at a young age, it just like aligned with a lot of my characteristics as a person. For one, I like debating. That is way too close. I definitely love debating. I don't like being right, but I like proving my point. In my head it's right, so I will prove it. But I also, how can I say, I'm more of a speaker, you know? Negotiating, stuff like that. That's like, it's intrinsic, like it's a natural thing for me. It's not something, I don't wake up in the morning, look myself in the mirror and I'm like, you've got this. How are you, sir? No, it just comes, you know? And I just have a way with people, like, I can just make people feel at ease, make people feel comfortable, like we can sit down and talk about whatever it is. At times I even ask myself, like, why didn't I study psychology? Or I'm like, why didn't I tell myself that when I was in that situation? But it's fine. That's why, definitely. So it aligns with the whole law thing, being an advocate, right? And then also, law because, I know this is going to sound cliche, but I do kind of like admire the whole legal system thing that we have going on, or like in the world. I mean, without laws, there would not be a society at all. I mean, we'll just be doing whatever we want, and we would not move forward, you know? So I'm a firm believer of order and peace, and instituting that, you understand? Yeah, even if sometimes I don't. Thank you.
And I must say, he's very dedicated. Rain or shine, as a distance student, he's on campus.
Oh,
he's
wow.
very famous. We'll find him in the library on his laptop, laying on the floor when he needs a break. He'll be studying all on his own without his
This is gonna be my motivation story when I'm there. You understand?
Yes, it's even recorded. And we're having a conversation at breakfast this morning that he looks like Harvey Specter from Suits.
Oh,
so
wow.
pursuing a law degree suits him very much.
Greetings, everyone. Okay, so the question is, why did I choose IT management? Okay, so I believe in change. I believe in time changing, and I believe the world is changing very fast these days. And I believe that the one industry that changes like that is IT. So just like, I think it was Mr. Hossan, he said that the way things are changing and the way nothing has changed, that does not imply in IT. We change every day. The phone that you have today, you bought yesterday. Today, there's a better phone that's better than that one. So I believe in change, particularly industrial change. So that's why I chose IT. Yes.
And it seems like you know what you're doing. Just from what I've been engaging, the point in your bio that you're going to be a part of an institution or organization where you feel you can really impact them, I believe once you're done, you're going to achieve that.
Yes, I believe that I'm unemployable. So
unemployable.
Yes, yesterday I got a new job, a new title that I'm gonna add on that bio. I'm a job creator.
You're a job creator,
Yes, so
yes. But it's true, he is running his own business where he's doing that.
Yes, so I'm a job creator from now on. Please put that under my name. Thank you.
You're a small cloud. You said to.
Okay, so I'm enrolled in African languages and literature. My specialty is isiXhosa. Firstly, I believe in languages. I believe in language. I think the world does not and cannot exist with language. We use it to communicate. We use it to structure the way things are. But to bring it more to me, I believe in African languages. I believe in the advancement of African languages. I believe that they can be used in higher functions. They can gain higher status where they're used in education, the media, in laws and stuff. And postgrad really showed me that I think my degree actually chose me from a very young age. I was so immersed in isiXhosa, like from primary school. Like I would win reading competitions in high school. I would literally just used to excel in isiXhosa, and I'm really excited about the future of African languages, and I think I can make a really great contribution as a linguist in that field.
Okay. And actually, a lot of people can identify what they want to do when they grow up so young, so that's commendable.
Yes. So I didn't really choose chiropractic. I was on my way to Stellies to study actuarial science, which is like
actuarial
so
science,
extreme.
wow.
And then I got a call from DT, which I wasn't expecting, because you know when you fill out the CAO form, you just fill the lines. And chiropractic was number 5, just to fill the lines. And then I got a call, and they're like, "Why are you not a registration? You need to be a registration." And my life did like a complete 360 in that moment. And I was like, I'm a big believer in science. And I was like, okay, I need to be doing this. And then I rolled up, and then I was really good at it. And yeah, that's how I landed up studying chiropractic, and it was the best decision that I made.
No, thank you. That answers that question. Why did they choose the programs they enrolled with? I have another question. Why the institution that you're at?
I can answer that one.
Okay, yes.
There's only 2 institutions in the whole of Africa that teach chiropractic, and that's UJ and DT, and Joburg's not for me. Okay. So.
No, you must come visit us. Don't be like that. You said to.
Okay, I like to call myself a staunch Cape Townian. I love Cape Town so much. I grew up there. I did all my schooling that side. And the quality of education at UCT is commendable. I think that's a known fact in the world. Yeah, I don't think there was a specific reason. It wasn't really like thought of. I think it was more of a convenience thing. I'm also kind of scared of change, especially that I had to take at that young age, like in first year. So it has to do with me loving Cape Town and me loving convenience, honestly.
Okay. But I have to disagree with you. UCT is not the best institution in the world. It's Regent.
Thank you.
Oh, it's UCT. It's definitely UCT.
Cooler, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm currently in Rosebank College, IIE Rosebank College, Durban campus. So I'm originally from Richards Bay, one of the richest cities that we have in KZN. Okay, so with that being said, the reason why I chose, let me say, the private sector of studying and everything, I don't believe in our government.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to say that.
That's a bold
Me too,
one. Okay.
me too.
Yeah,
don't
they
believe-
clapping for you. You can clap for him.
Maybe they might not.
He's our
because they are
politician in the making.
I'm sorry. I not that I don't believe in him or in them.
Okay.
Sorry, no, there are no names. I'll never do that. The thing is that I just don't understand. I think we were speaking about this yesterday, Dr. Idimelen, if I pronounce the name correctly. We cannot have students striking every day. Like, you cannot, comrade, no. It cannot be like that. After 3 strikes, you need to take actions. Transnet is currently striking, and they are on the news already. Yeah, but they're taking actions, exactly. So I believe that, so that's why I chose that, the private sector. And then in that private sector, I did not choose like to go Rosebank, no. I even applied to UCT. I think there's roads here, there's CTU. So I applied in all of those. So, and then when I was like, okay, this one is close to home, let me just take this one.
Okay, I see. I like why he chose a private institution. He doesn't believe in the universities. We're going to steal university, my friends. I'm stealing all your students. Lance.
Okay. Guys, I believe there's more questions. Be sure to not defame anyone.
Okay.
Or any institution at all. There's no bias. Why I chose Regent Business School? Okay, my major, being a corporate attorney, stuff like that, I wanted to go like to the pulse, you know, a business school for a corporate career. And what they would teach me the core, like analytics and everything that I would need to know when it comes down to businessing, you know. Did I say businessing?
Yeah, businessing. You coined a new word.
Is that a real word?
No, it's new now.
Neologism, the creation of new words.
Innovation, yes.
Yeah. When it comes down to like conducting business stuff like that, such as financial law, you know, e-commerce law, all these things, and not just, I kind of knew that I would get more out of a business school, you know, and how? I think it also contributes to my character, you know. I would consider myself to be not extremely formal, but business-minded, you know, an entrepreneurial mindset. And being in a space with people like that also helps you grow, you know, your character. You learn new insight every single day when it comes to the corporate world. My dad taught me something when I was younger. He said, you can't go to a pizza restaurant and order seafood. It's the same thing. So you have to be where you get the best out of what you want. And that's why I'm not marketing Regent Business School here. If it comes across like that, it is.
But it makes sense because if you read his bio, and I actually mentioned yesterday, he's both business-minded and he likes the legal system. So our program, Combo, was perfect for him. That's why he chose Regent. So thank you, guys. Yes. I promote Regent, sorry. So now your general comments. You've been sitting and listening to what? Yes. Oh, I was going to give you an opportunity. I wanted them to just give their general comments. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. Before we move away from the specifics, I'd really like to know whether you've identified anything specific that is lacking in your program. What is it now that you're now no longer a junior student or no longer a student? What is it that you look back and say, I wish I had that. I wish that was available in my program. Thanks.
Dr. Blom stole my question. No, it's okay. Answer, guys. Who wants to start?
Okay, just because it's already something that I've actually thought about and actually went like to various, I wouldn't say various schools, I've influenced students even in other institutions like, guys, hey, you need to look into this, you know, is when it comes down to law is it is theory and it's practical, you understand? So you have to be well-rounded on both areas. It's like being a chiropractic, you know, right? A chiropractitioner. Chiropractor.
There we go.
My bad. So moot court, if you guys would, you understand, actually teaching students what a court setting looks like, what takes place, who is the judge, what does the judge do, who's the prosecutor, who's the defendant, what do they do, who's the plaintiff, stuff like that, you know. That's not things that they teach you. You learn the theory of it, but you don't want to, like, be in a space where you understand but you cannot apply. Or see, you can't really say you understand at that point. So I think be practical with the things. Medical schools, and I'm not marketing, but I think UCT is like really good at this. I have a friend down there, I will not say her name. She's like in her third year, medical science, and she goes like to, they allow them the platform of like going to a public hospital or private, whatever it might be, and they actually get to like assist in certain things, you know? I think that's where you're gonna find yourself. You're not gonna always find yourself in front of a book doing theory in front of a computer. Like, you have to be able to be practical, you know? Otherwise you'll just be an advisor if it works for you.
Okay, so ma'am, in IT, okay, what I wish I knew and what they could change. Particularly, I'm gonna speak of my institution. Okay, or I'm gonna speak in the industry. I think I'm here representing IT. I didn't hear anyone who does IT here. So I have 100% right to lie and to say everything that I wanna say. So you can't be assessing a SAAIR who's doing first year with the same paper that we're assessing me with who's doing third year. This is IT. We're not teaching history here. If you were to be able to do that, like, if you were to be able to change, change caps, I'm not sure what they're using there, but change the caps. If I say caps, I'm referring to the system that they use in the governmental schools, caps. So change it every year. Like, this is IT. So I believe if they're to change this and make sure that each and every time there's something added to the database, something added to the system, in the work integrated learning units, everything you need to come and add it here. Teach it to the next person. I can't be helping SAAIR with the same thing that I learned last year. No, that's not how it's done. So I believe if they were able to change yesterday we spoke of assessments. If they were able to change the assessments, I spoke of change the thing you're assessing people with, not how you assess them. Assess them the same way, but change what you're assessing. You can't be assessing one thing every day.
No, very good point.
Okay, for me, it's more of a institutional problem and not a departmental problem. So my section is part of the bigger section, which is School of Languages and Literature, SLL, and we form part of the African Languages Department. So what I have noticed is the disintegration in the departments. So in the broader School of Languages and Literature, it consists of mainly European languages. So your French, German, Hebrew, classics, Latin, all of those things. And oftentimes, I feel like as the African Languages Department, we are underlooked, you know. I don't think we are afforded the same opportunities as other departments. For instance, I'm not sure, maybe it could also be lacking from the part of my department. Like, we don't get seminars that are, you know, organized outside of school. And I think UCT doesn't do a good job in promoting African languages, because I encounter students, black students, who don't know anything that UCT offers isiXhosa as a course, you know. So I think for me, and I'm glad that I got to interact with people who work for the quality departments, quality assurance departments, and institutional planning departments at various institutions. So I think my main thing is to like sort out that area, because I think there's a blurred area when it comes to African languages and the other languages, and that's why I think they need me. I will make sure that I take that department higher. Thank you.
Nice one.
So I'm very fortunate because I have, and I will back them on this, I have a very good department. It could be the fact that we're small, so each class is about 30 and we, 7 years. So every class has a class rep, and that rep facilitates everything straight to where it needs to be. So it goes from the students to the class rep, to the department head, vice versa. I know my dean personally. Like, I will meet her in the corridor and be like, how's it, prof? How's it going? And she knows me by name. And that's the relationship that we've been able to develop in the department, because we give it that chance. However, I do know other departments in the university where the issue is just communication. So for instance, my baby cousin is in another department in varsity, and I will be like, hey, did you pick your student card up this week? Because you were supposed to. And she'll be like, what? Why? I don't know this information. Where do I pick my student? And I'm like, it's in your emails. But it's not in her emails because it was not communicated with them. DUT use a normal email that goes to everybody on your student number. But my department made sure that each class has each student's personal email, which is the one we take. And I think communication is the most important thing that has allowed me. Yes, there were bumps on the road here and there, but mainly I've had a very smooth journey through varsity. Yes, there were issues with strikes and all of those, but those were at an institutional level, but did not affect me at such a large scale. So I think communication is the biggest thing, and learning or providing the means to do that amicably, like make sure that's done correctly.
Okay. Thank you. Does that answer your question, Dr. Blom? Is my mic still on? Okay, all right, I'm back on. So I wanted your general comments. So you've been sitting and listening to all of us and all the presentations. What's your take home? You want to start? Who wants to start?
Cooler, because you'll have the most to say.
Okay, I have a take home for oh, he's gone now. Okay, I had a take home for say.
Mr. Hussein.
Mr. Hussein.
Okay.
So Mr. Hussein spoke of having passionate and good students. So students who can who can love what they're doing and everything. So, and then that brought me to teachers, students who are doing SOE, School of Education, right now. One thing I can tell you about students right now, 80% of students who are at high school right now, none of them wants to be teachers when they are done studying. And teaching is not even on their top 2 choices when it's that 6, what we are talking about, what's this, where you choose careers, yes, application form. It's not even in that top 2, meaning that it's something that will come as a shock, just like you're saying. It will come as, okay, they did not want me to do software developer. They did not want me to do IT management. Okay, but I can't stay at home. My parents have the money to send me to a private school, have the money to send me there. Let me just go and be a teacher. And then after maybe 8 months of studying that teaching, you start loving that, and then you have love for children and everything. So it's not something that you've always wanted, just like Lance said, he has always wanted to be a lawyer. What he's doing is something that he grew up with. So my take home was that they should just understand that what they have in institutions is not what was first choices. And already that will not be treated as a first child.
Okay.
So that was my take home. That's Mr. Hussein's take home. And my take home was just a thank you. I wish this could not end. Like the way I enjoyed staying with big people in this room, and Monday going back to my class, you see. So I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much. I wish you can just do this every month. I don't know, just like salary.
Or a weekly, every week.
Like just maybe once a month, just like salary, once. Yeah. So if we were to do this, thank you very much for the opportunity, for the call-up. To everyone who's here, we clearly appreciate this. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. We thought it was very important that we engage with our students. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I'll go next. So the 2 days was exceptional, really thoroughly enjoyed, and I gained everything, literally all the knowledge in the world, I gained it in this room. Very impactful, and just something for all of you to ponder on. I know there's just 4 of us here, but I think we need to give students the autonomy, like students are self-governing. I don't think it's enough that we get to sit here and, discourse about them, and on them. I just personally think that we could have filled these chairs with more student voices, because after all, you are doing it for the students. I know you have your titles, you have your descriptions and stuff, but at the end of the day, it has to benefit the students. And I don't see why we can't invite them to have these things. And at your various institutions, I urge you all to start these things, even on a smaller scale, get a group of students to talk about issues, pertinent issues, especially this issue of learning during COVID-19. The student experience is very, very, very important. As I mentioned yesterday, all the research, all the studies that were done were about the lecturers and stuff, and I still maintain that is not enough, that is not sufficient, because oftentimes we feel like we are being left out of the conversation, like the door is literally being closed on us, and it's like we matter and we are the crucial point of everything. As I said yesterday, there is no institution without the students. So I just think that let's open it up more. I also spoke about students being able to reach out to professionals, but I also think professionals should open themselves up, we should create spaces where students can reach out to you, spaces where we can feel safe and we can feel nurtured and to vent as well. Spaces aren't only for learning and for formalities, but we also must be given the opportunities to vent and talk about things. So as Kula mentioned, I'm also very grateful to have been part of this thing, and as an aspiring young academic, I hope to form part of more, because I believe that I can make a huge impact to change the status quo, maybe also to maintain it, if the good parts of it. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope to meet you all someday again. Thank you.
You wanna go?
Okay, so I think the biggest thing that I've picked up, and which we know, is that varsities, colleges, universities, it's all a business. It's a business. And at the end of the day, no business will run at its best if the customer isn't happy. And the customer is the students. In healthcare, for evidence-based practice, we have a little triad Venn diagram, and it's evidence-based, so all the evidence, all the research, the clinical experience, and then the patient's values and beliefs and how they feel, and all of that will give you a positive patient outcome if you combine all. So for me, that means I need to be at the top of my game as a practitioner, I need to be up to date with the literature. And when my patient comes in, I need to listen to them and find out what exactly do they want when they're coming into my practice. What is it they are expecting to gain from a treatment with me? And I think that can be so easily adaptable to this situation. To run this business smoothly, to facilitate the transition, to make sure that at the end of the day, the customer and the student is happy, you need to find out what is it that that student expects about their trip to varsity, the degree they're about to obtain, and the end result of what that degree is going to do for them. And you all sitting here are the facilitators of that. The administration, you're the sales rep, you're the regional manager. Without you, the customer is not going to be happy, but the customer is not going to be happy if you yourself don't know what you're doing, or you are not on top of your game. And it all works hand in hand. And most importantly, you all sitting here with your PhDs and your this and your that and all the exciting things, you have an opportunity to back all of that up. You are the people that can put in the research and give us the evidence to find out how we make that entire process better so that the education system in this country can step up. So for me, I think the biggest thing is to try and facilitate that and put the student expectation and satisfaction at the forefront. Because this is just your 9 to 5, but your 9 to 5 is going to make the biggest difference in that student's life. So yeah.
No, brilliant. Well said, Lance.
Very well said, yeah. That was good. What was the question?
The question was... Yeah, your takeaway.
My take home.
Yes.
Okay.
What's in your takeaway box?
Food? I'm joking. I would say my take home, I'll break it down into 3 key points just to keep it simple. And I'm trying to do this correctly. So firstly, consideration and effort. That's the first key point. Second one is innovation and creativity. And change and prosperity is the third. So to start with the first one, which is effort and consideration. That is from your side, I've actually seen firsthand now, and I can go and speak on it because I've seen it, is the amount of consideration that educators, as well as educational standard setters, and institutions as an organization, how much they actually care about the student. It's like, we understand that it's a business, yeah, but today I've seen that to some people it's more than a business. And I want that to motivate a few students to actually be a bit more considerate toward your educators themselves and actually consider how much time and effort that they put in just to ensure that how you understand question 1. Even though it might not be a big deal to you, there's a lot of work that went into it behind the scenes. And there's a lot of effort there too. And I appreciate that a lot. I would never overlook that. Effort is not something that comes easy. And you guys definitely do put in the effort. I did not even know, you put in this much effort. I'm being honest. I'm just like, oh, they're just teaching what they're given, you understand? But there's a lot more to it. Creativity and innovation. This is for both students and institutions. So both, right, need to be creative and innovative. From the student side, right, they kind of need to grow with the institution, you understand, so that they can flourish. Meaning, if the institution changes the way in which they educate now, such as blended learning, as opposed to your traditional lecture hall, be like, you, D4, yeah, at the back, what does that? But now it's kind of like on Zoom, get with the program because it's not going to change. It's also, there's a lot of advantages for you as a student in it. Given the first one is convenience, and on behalf of the institution, it's cost effective. And creativity, man. The institution should also, put your ear on the ground. Not everyone wants to be an attorney. Not everyone wants to be a chiropractor. practitioner. I tried. Not everyone wants to be a linguist. And Konja, you are a lot of things, ne? Yeah. Sells insurance policies. I'm joking. But not everyone wants to go into a formal discipline that you have to be educated for, to be accredited for it, and then go in the profession. Some people want to be social media personalities, you understand? And we understand that like institutions in education has taken the forefront on that. When you look at schools like AVDA and Media House, and you know, all these, how can I say, not formal disciplines, like being a medical expert. So maybe institutions, even if you are like an institution that made like your specialization, such as Regent Business School, like maybe you guys should just have like short entrepreneurial courses on how to be a YouTuber. Have you ever thought about that? Yeah, cite me on that and pay me my royalties if I see it. If I see it there in the brochure next year. And because you're an institution, you're a business, there's money for you, there's so much people that they don't want to go into formal disciplines, and it's sad to say it, but most young people actually see school as holding them back. That is sad to see when education is actually there to like propel you forward. You understand? But it's simply because conservative institutions refuse to, they turn a blind eye to like how actually wanting to do that for the students, you understand? Because like a law degree it's cost like money, and a course on YouTube will be like a couple of thousands. You're like, no, there's no business there, it's a waste of our time. And then let me just get to the last point, which was, I even forgot. Okay, the last point was change and prosperity. We'll both win. It's a win-win for the student and the institution. We will grow. You understand? You'll have more business and more money. And your classes will be filled with a diversified group of people from different backgrounds that'll even grow you as a person. You understand? And the world will literally be filled with a lot of people that are equipped and self-reliant, and they can contribute toward the economy and society. And people will be resourceful. It'll be a good world to live in. That's basically just it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Kieran had a last comment, and I know we're running over time, but like I said yesterday, the student is the most important voice. So let's just give her her last
I promise. Last thing. I'm also hungry. So, you know, everyone's been giving us a pat on the back in the last 2 days to say, well done, guys. You adapted. You are so amazing. But the fact is, we didn't have a choice. We had to do it. Because if we didn't, how are we going to get our degree, and how are we going to get on with our lives? And we were put under an immense amount of pressure to make that change, and we did it, and kudos to us. But I challenge you to just put yourselves in those predicaments again, to challenge yourselves to make the moves you need to make, because we don't need another bout of COVID to make us be better or do better. We have it in us because we know we just did it. So, you know, we can do this again, we can become better, we can lead the way, but you need to allow yourselves to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation, to think out of the box, do things that are out of your comfort zone to get you to this new, better, and not new normal, the normal.
Yeah, the normal.
The new normal.
So with that said, guys, can we please give our students a big hand? They are indeed excellent students, and I believe that they'll individually be very successful with the qualifications that they either have completed or in the process of completing. So thank you, guys. You can go back to your seats. You can leave the mic.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
I will send you my invoice.
Yes, send me your invoice. So with that said, colleagues, I was actually thinking of what Dr. Patel said yesterday. Would students prefer to have a smart teacher or a funny teacher, a comedian in the classroom? That's something we should also consider. Maybe our lecturers must go for a course in being comedians as well so that they can engage more with their students. So now to offer the summary for our forum, concluding remarks and vote of thanks, I would like to welcome my partner in crime and in organizing this event. This is Lisa Klute from the University of Cape Town, but she also is one of the executives at SAAIR, and she will conclude for us. I forgot to say body pack.
Okay, I'm happy to sit here as well.
No, you can stand there. It's just that that mic was giving us issues. That's the reason.
Wow. The presentations and discussions of the last day and a half offered such rich food for thought. And as we continue to synthesize everything, I now offer a brief summary of what we have heard, and I'll try and make it as brief as I possibly can. To our online attendees, thank you for indulging me. I'll try to wrap up in 10 minutes, but please bear with us. Yesterday, the Regent Business School MD, Prof. Ahmed Sheikh, set the scene for the day's engagements with a presentation packed with food for thought. He highlighted that we are operating in a world that is changing at a rate with which we, in higher education, constantly need to keep up, mentioning that major disruptive shifts have launched us into a context where the lasting impacts of a global pandemic will be with us for a long time to come. And while everything has changed in the world, nothing seems to have changed in higher education. And that really sat with me. He added that while institutions by their very nature are resilient, we need to think deeply about pedagogy, curriculum reform, and our role within this context to remain relevant. So while we're resilient, how will we remain relevant? On this point, it is undoubtedly true that the pandemic had catapulted all HEIs around the world into a new and unfamiliar way of working, abandoning the old and familiar to implementing a new way of teaching under ERT. Results for this particular, I think I skipped myself here. On this, where was I? Sorry. Results for this particular survey were somewhat surprising as most staff seemed able to adapt fairly smoothly into the new environment, but not without its challenges. Work-life balance, as we all well know and felt, together with much higher workloads, appeared to be a major challenge, and while a range of previously underutilized technology enablers were introduced into the teaching and learning environment, a key success factor in the teaching and learning process had been lost: the human interaction. Of course, the pandemic became a double-edged sword in some respects, as it took such a catastrophic phenomenon to force all of us to adopt and accept technology as a vital medium in the teaching and learning process, but at the cost of person-to-person connections that are part of our hardwiring. Dr. Blom highlighted as part of her presentation the strong emergence and awareness of student mental health. Dr. Menon reminded in the panel discussion that technology is not the driver of the curriculum and related pedagogy, but rather is an enabler, stating, as did Prof. Sheikh, that we now have the opportunity as we emerge from the pandemic to reflect deeply and intentionally on how technology can be used to shift the way we teach and the way students learn. Dr. Stoltz-Urban shared some interesting insights from her institution on how they have strengthened the student-academic relationship through technology with a strong emphasis on staff development, mentioning that an effective approach has been to introduce CPD in a non-threatening manner through communities of practice. Presenters from the University of Cape Town, Presenters from the University of Cape Town shared insights from their institutional survey with academic staff, unpacking pains, gains, and losses of assessment during the pandemic. They discussed the shift in complexity of all assessments over the years, with literature noting how we value different things based on our own experiences, which are seldom explicit, but influence contemporary assessment design and marking practices. They mentioned that one learns to mark by marking, built up over years of experience, and this was all turned on its head during the pandemic. The UCT staff survey highlighted a range of concerns with assessment practices and processes during this time, noting that much skepticism was linked to the lack of preparedness and time to redesign such assessments for the online environment. The final session for the day concluded with an account from students themselves and how they experienced teaching and learning during the pandemic. Students highlighted the disparity between their backgrounds and levels of preparedness for the remote teaching environment. They also highlighted that the levels of anxiety experienced under remote teaching conditions were a significant challenge, which placed a huge strain on their own mental health and well-being. Students underscored the need to train teachers, specifically in terms of assessment methodologies, and more importantly, to facilitate these with students. Students also raised questions on the need to reflect on how learning may occur rather than following the old familiar path of memory retention under timed conditions, which yield little benefit. They reminded us, as the day drew to a close, that institutions have so much to learn from one another and that we should be open to sharing these with one another. Today's earlier presentation explored the question of whether innovative approaches produce better graduates and drew attention to the need for students to be job literate. We looked at the traits required for the future world of work and the tension between realistic expectations of students and what can reasonably be achieved through the curriculum. The presentation also left us with a reminder of the value and importance of work-integrated learning and how to think differently about traditional approaches to internships. Dr. Landman's final presentation focused on whether innovative approaches in teaching and learning equal a quality learning experience. He honed in on student digital literacy and the ability to navigate technical platforms meaningfully for effective learning. He also outlined that an effective digital literacy approach has to include and consider technical proficiencies that are required alongside learning competencies that are needed. So you need both. Having listened to the wealth of insights that have been shared over the last day and a half, you may be asking yourself, how do I, as a quality assurance specialist, take forward this wisdom within my own institution to effect change? I'm asking myself this question, and the answer is not simple. But quality assurance specialists, by their very nature, are change agents within institutions. And such change needs to start within our span of control, with us. We should be questioning, as with teaching and assessment methodologies during disruptive moments in time, whether our approaches to quality assurance and promotion too require a shift. Should we be creating better and stronger connections within our own portfolios, alongside students, to become more student-centered ourselves? Perhaps we should be co-developing new and different quality assurance practices with academics, more collaboratively, to test whether there are peas in the can, as we heard from Dr. Stolz-Urban yesterday. So, to echo a theme that has emerged in this year's Quality Forum, the time is now to reflect on practice and to plan for change. And don't forget that we are the facilitators of change. Would you like me just to go into the thanks now or to wait for you?
I was going to say something, but you can...
Sure, no, I'll wait then. Thank you. That's my summary.
But don't disappear. Okay. Since it will be brief. Is the mic on? All right. We can stand together since we're concluding. But I wanted to just mention or highlight something. We've all seen the recent good practice guide from the SAAIR on student engagement, right? Yes, eyebrows instead of nodding your head. Nice one. But The reason why, I just want to apologize to the colleagues online as well and yourselves in the auditorium, why I decided to run over time with the students is that we rush with our students because we are impatient and we feel we need to get to more important things. They are the most important thing. We should be listening. And I don't know, not everyone has the same approach or time, but I like to take time. Ask lunch, I'll come sit downstairs with them when they're having lunch and just listen to what the nonsense that they talk. And I'm like, informal discussions can actually inform what we do a lot. And I value those engagements so much. And I just want to read this comment from a colleague online, Sharon. She says, I'm enjoying the students' input. I love the energy and the ability to see the solutions. Reminds me of the years gone by. Thank you. So you see, our colleagues appreciated that. So what Sesethu said, maybe we should consider collaboratively hosting a student seminar. We get students from our various institutions and let's engage in them. It's just an idea, but I'm throwing it out there. And on that point as well, I wanted to actually just thank everybody. She's going into the thanks, so it's like an intro to Lisa. So I wanted to thank everybody for attending this hallmark event, because for us as Regent, it's like a wow. We're the first institution, private institution to have hosted this. And thank you to my colleagues who have supported me just in preparing for this. Thank you, Dr. Blom, very, very much. I appreciate it. And I hope that we can do this again, because I understand that in order to achieve quality, we need to quality assure ourselves first. And that's why lunch is going to be in a moment. Lisa?
Very quickly. I'd just like to do the formal thanks. And as the forum draws to a close, it's only fitting that we acknowledge a few people. First and foremost, on behalf of SAAIR, I would like to extend deep gratitude to Prof. Sheikh and Regent Business School for hosting the Quality Forum this year. As the SAAIR president mentioned yesterday, one of the strategies was to bring the sector closer together and to establish new connections amongst peers. This year, for the first time in SAAIR history, we have had a private provider host the forum, and it is clear that while our HE system is differentiated, the issues we are grappling with are not vastly different. There is so much that public universities can learn from the more agile private institutions, and we too have an abundance of knowledge to offer in return. And my hope is that through the forum, this relationship grows from strength to strength going forward. To the Regent Business School marketing team, IT and technical teams, and all those who work tirelessly behind the scenes and on stage to pull together this event, thank you. In addition, a special thanks to Regent Business School for sponsoring the evening dinner for our face-to-face delegates last night. Fun was had. I would also like to appreciate all the presenters, panelists, and students who availed themselves for being willing to share your thoughts, insights, and research with delegates. To the Quality Forum Planning Group, Dr. Blom and Sarah, thank you for your enthusiasm, commitment, and time meeting every week to think through everything from conceptualizing the forum structure to the development of the theme to the detailed logistics. To Sarah, moment, can we just clap for Sarah? Your facilitation over the last 2 days, day and a half, has been outstanding. And I want to thank you sincerely for the countless hours that you put into the forum, which nobody else actually knows. You have no idea how many sleepless nights this lady has had. Regent knew they hired a star when they appointed you. I also wanted to thank the SAAIR president, executive committee, and administrator for their support, and especially for agreeing to try new and different approaches to hosting events such as this in future. And finally, to our most important constituency, our delegates, thank you for availing yourselves for the Quality Forum, especially when many of us have emerged from institutional audits or are preparing for them shortly. and for your support and engagement in these fora always. We hope that you have found the presentations thought-provoking and valuable. Thank you.
So I'm just going to give Lisa a hug now. Thank you so much. And thank you, colleagues. Like I said, in order to achieve quality, we need to quality assure ourselves. So ending early, at the program early, was actually intentional, not stretching it until 4 in the afternoon, because you're in Durban, go have fun, relax. You're going to start by having something to eat. And thank you so much to our colleagues for your patience online and for joining us. We hope to see you again one day, and hopefully, perhaps one day, we can host this event again with an auditorium full of students. Ne, Setu? But thank you, colleagues. Lisa just has one more thing to say.
Colleagues online and here, I just forgot my notebook, which I knew I should have brought with me. Just 2 very quick things. We will be sending a feedback form to you in your inbox, so please look out for that. And we in quality, we need feedback, and we'll take it all. So please do look out for that. We'll be distributing that probably early next week, and please complete it. And then secondly, there was a request. I mean, these kinds of fora are to network and to connect with one another. So if you have a problem with me or SAAIR sharing your email address, please email me or Karen at SAAIR directly to indicate that you would not like your email address to be shared. We obviously don't want to contribute any poppy issues. So if you do have an objection to that, email us separately. Alternatively, we will distribute your email address to everyone who attended. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. With that, we are done. Sayonara, goodbye. You can go home now. All right, lunch is next door, everybody. We're not chasing you away. Please come and eat. And to our colleagues on